Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the April 10th, 2025 meeting of the Columbia Association Board of Directors. I've got my microphone on. Things are good there. All right. First thing we'll do tonight is roll call. All right, here we go. Sky.
Yes.
Reg.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Chris. Chris has not joined us yet. Mike.
Here.
Thank you. Eric.
Here.
Eric is here. Paul.
Here.
Colin.
Here.
Ashley.
Here.
I'm here. Sean.
I'm here.
The CA president is in the house. All right. Let's see. Tonight, as per usual, we are conducting a hybrid meeting. We have members and residents here in Columbia Association headquarters. And we're also streaming this live, and we have both members and residents online too. Just a couple of quick notes here. If you have a personal device, telephone, tablet, laptop, if you could please silence it or put it on vibrate. I want to make sure that when folks are speaking, we can hear them and their speech is not stepped over by somebody's phone ringing. So please, if we could do that. Let's see. Colin's our timekeeper? Yes? All right. Very good. And let's see, closed meetings. I have 2 closed meetings to report. One was last night. The Risk Management Committee held a closed meeting here at headquarters. Committee members present were Sean McGinnis, Susan Krabby, Sky Anderson, Michael Goliebersuch, and Ashley Vaughn. What do we got here? No vote needed. Oh. The vote was unanimous for closing it. I guess the meeting was closed at 6:05, and the meeting ended at 6:48. The reason for closing, HOA 11B 111 4IV. 4IV is consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. Second closed meeting was held just prior to this meeting of the Board of Directors. Members present were Reg, Karen, Mike, Eric, Paul, who arrived at 6:05, myself, Sean, Ashley, and Sky, who arrived at 6:35. Motion closed was 7-0-0. Those were the people who were present at the time. Meeting commenced at 6 p.m. and it ended at 6:55. That's why we got here in such a rush at the very end. Purpose of the meeting was in accordance with the Homeowners Association Act 11B 111, Section 4, Roman numeral I, discussions of matters pertaining to employees and personnel. Those are our closed meetings that we held. Next up, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Colin is moved.
I second it.
And Sky is seconded. Do we have any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to move to amend the agenda to add item 7D under old business, a vote for the president CEO evaluation policy.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the amendment is to add an item to the agenda, 7D, old business, and that is the, once again, presidential evaluation. President's evaluation. You are
Policy.
presidential, but you are a president.
Policy, but yes.
Evaluation policy. Okay, any further discussion on this? Do we have a,
Eric's got his hand up.
Eric?
I was putting my hand up to add another agenda item.
Okay, can we vote on this item and then we'll go with your amendment?
Sure.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion on this amendment? Okay, well then we will call it. I'm gonna get myself a sheet here.
I think you could just ask for this one if there's any objections.
All right, well, we'll move faster. Is there any objection to this amendment? Hearing no objection, the amendment is approved to the agenda. Eric, do you have an amendment?
Yeah, I moved to amend the agenda to add under old business the village management contracts, which we previously discussed under new business at the prior meeting.
Under old business, the management contract?
Yes, the village management contracts. We previously discussed this under new business last meeting, so it would now be old business.
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, so moved by Eric, seconded by Karen, add under old business, the village management contract. Any discussion? Colin?
Eric, can you clarify how much time you're thinking? Sorry.
15 minutes.
Say that again, 15?
15. By the way, how much time was allocated to the previous?
I realized I
agenda
didn't do that myself. I apologize.
Okay, well, would you like to give me a time now?
Can we say 5?
For 5? Okay, 5 minutes. 5 minutes added for the president's evaluation policy. 15 minutes is what we've stated as part of the motion for old business village management contract. Any further discussion? Okay. All right. There we go. Sky.
Yes.
Mike?
I should say go by objection again.
All right, well, we'll do that. Any objection to adding this to the agenda? Okay. We're moving fast. Okay. Any other amendments to the agenda? So, vote on the main agenda. The main agenda, as amended, will add, under old business, 2 items. One is the president's evaluation policy, 5 minutes of discussion. In addition, a second agenda item under old business, the village management contract, 15 minutes. That is what we're voting on for the main agenda. We're doing this really well. Does anybody have any objection to the main agenda as amended?
Clarification.
Yes.
I wasn't listening. The CEO president, that's for a vote?
Well, we put it on the agenda under old business, so a vote can happen on that particular item, yes.
Okay, and the management contract is not for a vote, although it's under old business?
Typically, we don't vote on something that's under negotiation. I'll state that, okay? Clear? Okay. Any objection to the amended agenda? Okay, the amended agenda is passed. All right. We move on now to Columbia Update. Sean?
Yes, so let me start. Before you start the video, so the first video is Afrobeats. Earlier this year, we held a first of its kind event called the Afrobeats Bash and Blend, led by multicultural program manager Elena Slotnick. We welcomed about 100 people to Supreme Sports Club Arena to learn about the roots of Afrobeats and participate in some fun moves. This was a wonderful representation of how different areas of wellness, like physical, social, and intellectual, are all interconnected. Here's a look at the Afrobeats Bash and Blend, and we look forward to many more multicultural events that bring this kind of experience to more of our residents.
We are having a new event called Afrobeats Bash and Blend. It's a celebration of Afrobeats music and Afro dance. The journey of the music is very multicultural. It has a lot of different influences. It's a mixture of music from different countries. It's multilingual. The past 5 or 6 years, there's really been a dance revolution that has brought a lot of different countries together through uplifting Afro street dance using Afrobeats music. CA as an organization understands that we live in a very diverse community with people from all different backgrounds, from all different walks of life. And in order to create a community with a shared purpose, it's important to provide opportunities where people feel a sense of place and a sense of belonging. Opportunities through programming like this, inclusive programming that's free, open to the public, provides an opportunity for people to share their heritage, but also educate people about different cultures and different heritages, and that's a core value of CA. I hope people walk away with inspiration and and a sense of connecting with others. I hope people walk away with a better understanding of what Afrobeats music is, of what Afro dance is, of where it comes from, how it's developed, and maybe having a conversation with someone new.
All right. Next, April is Earth Month, and there's always a lot to talk about when it comes to CA's commitment to our environment. Our sustainability team will be out in full force at the county's Green Fest at Howard County Community College this Saturday. Make sure to come and say hello.
Hi, today we are at one of CA's pocket meadows.
I never know. I'll never get through all these bullets. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Here at the base of Wild Lake Dam. This is a really cool and unique ecosystem that provides habitat to all sorts of native pollinating insects and smaller critters. It doesn't look like much now, but this material is great habitat for insects to overwinter in. It is a multi-season process to establish these meadows. We'll start by clearing the area. It's particularly important if there is any invasive plants in the area, and prep the site for the seed. It's kind of in stages, but by around year 2 or 3, you're gonna get stuff that's about as high as you see here. There really is no size requirement for these meadows. They're not that hard to establish. You just wanna make sure that you're using native plants. So if this is something you're interested in, I would definitely recommend trying to start a little patch in your own yard.
All right, next is bamboo mitigation. While CA plants many trees across all 10 villages, there is a robust program to remove invasive species as well. One of the most pervasive and persistent of those invasives is bamboo. Conservation specialist Eric Walker is working hard to mitigate the negative impact of bamboo and all invasives. Here he is talking about what we can all do to and look out for.
Bamboo is a non-native invasive plant found here in Colombia. Like many invasive plants, it's highly destructive. Here we are in a patch of running bamboo. You can see how thick it is. The biggest effect is nothing else will grow in here because of the shade. Under here, you'll see one of the runners or rhizomes. Once they're here, they just continue to expand and permeate the soil. Because of the nature of its invasiveness, it can take many years to control. The best thing you can do to help CA fight invasive bamboo is to never plant it in the first place. Also, go out and spread the word about non-native invasive plants and the harmful impacts on our environment.
All right, and last, the Columbia Arts Center team is back in Long Reach after months of renovations. We're looking forward to an official reopening next month. In addition to classes and programs returning to the refreshed space, our next installment of Change in Columbia speaker series is all about art and its role in our community. The panel includes local creative professionals, including our very own Liz Hensey, manager of the Columbia Arts Center. It will take place Wednesday, April 23rd at the neighboring Stonehouse. Free childcare is available with registration. So leading up to this event, we are setting the stage for the conversations with the help of Liz and archivist Erin Berry.
Arts and culture within the community of Columbia, Maryland, and capturing that, I think, is a very important aspect of the story of Columbia. When James Rouse and his companies wanted to create Columbia, he wanted to create a full community. One thing that's pretty remarkable about the arts and culture in Columbia is that it's the people that live here that are creating it. They literally created it out of nothing. Columbia was a brand new community that was starting. There wasn't many resources here yet. They made it themselves in order to flourish what the arts and culture is today in Columbia, which in many cases is nationally renowned, which is pretty remarkable.
That's it.
All right, thank you, Sean. Okay. We'll now move on to our resident speak out section of our meeting. Just a few ground rules. Thank you all in advance for coming and providing input to the Columbia Association. Individuals will have 3 minutes. Individuals speaking for a group will be allotted 5 minutes. Colin will be providing our timing. If you run out of time, we'll ask you to just kind of finish your thought, and then we'll move on to everybody else, okay? We have 6 folks who are signed up, as I said, both virtual and in person. Our first resident for speaking is Sally Kearney, followed by Micah McGarity. I apologize in advance for that. I apologize. Sally, is Sally online?
Yes. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Sally. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I wanted to thank you for this opportunity to speak. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. My husband and I have lived in Columbia for 42 years. We live in Governor's Grant in Town Center, and until recently, I served on our Governor's Grant Master Board. I am here to speak as a homeowner who cares deeply about my local community and the broader Columbia community. Let me state it plainly. My husband and I believe the structure of our independent villages and their current relationship with the Columbia Association is working just fine. And so we strongly oppose the various proposals CA is floating that would in any way change that relationship as it stands today. Why do we oppose the proposals? Our answer is simple. Local is best. We know that the local village centers and boards serve us best when they are both local and independent. There is no point and nothing constructive about having someone who does not live in our community attempt to micromanage our community. Personal relationships are paramount, and the personal relationships that make independent villages successful cannot be replicated by outsiders. We know from our experience that the more attenuated management becomes, the less responsive it becomes. Even small steps to micromanage independent villages weaken and downgrade the neighbor-to-neighbor communication that has served Columbia so well for decades. Locally run independent villages enable all of us to be actively engaged in our communities. My husband and I frequently communicate with our Town Center board members and with our Town Center executive director. These folks are amazingly responsive. And when we have an issue or problem, they are immediately on the case. The board meetings are inclusive and professionally run, just like yours. In short, these folks are experienced and responsible professionals who care about our community. Does CA have a role in its relationship with the villages? Of course you do. But I would respectfully urge you to sidestep these proposals and direct your energies to other things. Please do not make the argument that the steps you are proposing do not represent infringements, because I believe they do. And we all know that small beginnings often take on a life of their own and result in large changes that no one wanted. I repeat, local is best. There is nothing to be gained by interfering with the independence of our villages, and there is a great deal, indeed very much, to lose. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you. Do we have any board members that have any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to try Micah McGarity and then Jessica Cade.
I think it's Mike McGarity.
Mike? Okay.
Yeah.
Mike? No one else? Well, Mike, I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to speak tonight, and I apologize for any mispronunciation there. I feel terrible. Jessica Cade and then Laura Mayton will be following.
Whoa. Whoa.
Hello. Hello. I'm just standing here.
Welcome and good evening.
Good evening. My name is Bethana Shukri, and along with Jessica Cade, we are the co-leaders for Moms Demand Action. We're here in Howard County. We fall under the national organization, Everytown for Gun Safety. With nearly 11 million members, Everytown is the largest grassroots movement of Americans working to end gun violence. Our values include being data-driven, being intersectional, being committed to creating a diverse, inclusive, and equitable movement, and being nonpartisan. Everytown happens to be led by Wild Lake High School alumna Angela Farrell Zabala. Every day in the United States, more than 120 Americans are killed by gun violence, and 200 more are shot and wounded, with an average of 17,000 gun homicides every year. In Maryland, we average 805 people dying by guns annually. We have the 35th highest rate of gun deaths in the U.S. The impact of gun violence affects us locally and nationally and remains in our collective consciousness.
In 2013, 15-year-old Hadia Pendleton was shot and killed on a playground in Chicago. To commemorate her life, her friends began wearing orange, her favorite color, and the color hunters wear to stay safe. Wear Orange is now observed yearly. Across the country, the first weekend in June is designated Wear Orange Weekend, and the first Friday is designated National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Last June, throughout the country, various sites were lit orange, from the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., to the Kansas City Convention Center, from T-Mobile Park, the home of the Seattle Mariners, to Baltimore City Hall. As we did last year, we asked the Columbia Association to issue a proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day, and we request the Lake Kittamakundi fountain to be lit orange for the weekend. We extend an invitation to your board for a member to represent you at Wear Orange on June 6th, and hope all of you will join us at the lakefront. By participating in Wear Orange, our community will honor those killed by gun violence and will support and uplift the countless survivors who are wounded and traumatized. Together we can build a future free from gun violence. Thank you for your consideration and support. And we have we'll pass around the proclamation.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
So it's really for Jeremy, I guess. We've done this twice now, I guess, right? Okay.
Yep. Okay. Eric? No? Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Laura Mayton and then Lynn Locke.
Hey, everybody. I do have a request. When I signed up, I was expecting to testify as an individual, but I'm testifying on behalf of 8 villages, so I was hoping I might have 5 minutes instead of 3.
That's fine.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Laura Mayton. I'm the village manager for Hickory Ridge, and I was also selected by the village managers to represent them in the negotiations on the agreements with CA, the management agreements. Tonight, I would like to discuss those, the facility and assessment share agreements between CA and the villages. The contract came up for renewal, and the villages were optimistic about renewing the contract with CA, and we hope to collaborate with CA to arrive at agreements that would work for all of our organizations for many years. Last spring, Juelle Campbell, the community planner at CA, was appointed liaison between the villages and CA staff. She organized a meeting on June 13th, 2024, with village managers to discuss the process of updating the contract. The process presented by Juelle included at least 1 working meeting, then time to work on solutions to any conflicts, and a joint meeting to present solutions found to the conflicts. Unfortunately, the working meeting, the time to work on solutions, and the joint meeting to present solutions did not occur. The villages were expecting negotiation, defined by Harvard Law School as a back-and-forth communication designed to reach an agreement when you and the other side have some interests that are shared and others that are opposed. On all previous occasions when this agreement was renewed, back-and-forth communication occurred. This time, the anticipated dialogue did not occur. What did happen was this. CA gave the villages new updated agreements with some brief justifications. The old management contract was separated into 2 agreements, one for facility management and one for the assessment share. Then the village managers and CA staff met, and CA staff presented the rationales for separating the contract into 2 agreements, and the village managers presented some preliminary ideas. The villages as a group then submitted redlined agreements to CA and included this letter from all 10 village board chairs stating that they were writing to provide support for the draft changes made to the agreements by the village managers. All villages were speaking with one voice. CA asked the village managers for rationales for the redlined agreements, and the village managers provided them. Then Judell scheduled a meeting, which included Susan Krabby, Jeremy Scharfenberg, Lynn Schwartz, myself, and Steve Ingley from Harper's Choice, who was also one of the designees from the village managers. At that meeting, CA staff asked me to restate the written rationales. No discussion took place. About a week after that meeting, Judell informed Steve and I that we would receive the final versions of the contracts. Steve and I stated that we were surprised that no negotiation or discussion had occurred. There was no opportunity to work on solutions or resolve conflicts. The villages received the final agreements on March 7th. Included with the agreements was this memo that states if signatures for both contracts have been received by April 22nd, funds will be electronically transferred by CA on April 29th and will show up in your registered account, the village's registered account, by April 30th. This implies if a village does not sign, the village will not receive their operating funds. 8 villages then sent a letter to you, the CA board, on March 26th, requesting that the management contract be extended till September 30th, as is stated in the current contract in Article 4, Section 2, in order to continue negotiations. So due to the lack of collaboration during this process, the villages are unclear about CA's rejections of the village's requested changes. This disconnect could have been avoided if the agreed-upon process to update the contract established last June had been followed. We respectfully request the following. Please give CA and the villages time to address and resolve the issues with the assessment share and facility management agreements. Use Article 4, Section 2 in the current management contract to allow negotiations to continue. Please also fund the villages for the first and second quarters of FY26, starting May 1, to give us time to find solutions. You, the CA board, have approved a budget for the next fiscal year that allocates these funds to the villages. Thank you for your time and attention. And your commitment to fostering collaboration between CA and the villages. I appreciate the opportunity to share these concerns with you tonight, and I'm hopeful that together we can find solutions that benefit all involved. Can I answer any questions?
Thank you. Karen has the first question.
Thank you, Bill. Laura, thank you very much for coming in. I have 2 questions for you. The first is, do you believe that you are still negotiating or you are no longer negotiating with CA?
I believe we are still negotiating because Sean has agreed to meet with us, which I thank Sean for agreeing to that. We worked that out at the managers meeting yesterday morning, but it is important that when we meet with Sean, we meet with other CA staff members who have the detailed knowledge about the agreement so that we can hopefully hash out any concerns that exist that they have about what we've said and that we have about what they've asked for.
Okay, my second question was going to be, what do you hope to achieve with further discussion? But I think you kind of answered that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we just all need to sit down at a table together. And like I said, this whole thing could have been avoided if we just all had an opportunity to sit down and talk about our concerns and define terms. That's another important thing. There's terms in those agreements that may be misperceived by one group or another.
Okay, we have a couple of more questions for you, if you would let us. I have Sky, then Reg, and then Eric, okay?
Okay.
We've been hearing about this for a while, and a couple of roles have been sort of mentioned. One is involving a mediator, and the other is involving an attorney for both sides. Which of those would you prefer, or both of them?
It depends upon the concerns. I mean, if the concerns are the language that was put in the edits by the attorney that the villages hired to add language to, balance the agreements, then I would say it might be good for our attorney to sit down with CA's attorney. If it's, if we reach a loggerhead, we're certainly open to mediation as well. Anything to get us to agreements that benefit everyone and that can be lasting.
Okay. Reg.
Okay, good evening. Just wondering how much I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Just wondering, how much additional time would you need to use to work out this negotiation? Are you looking at a month, 2 months, 5 months?
So the current management contract we're under has a clause within it that states that the agreement can remain in effect until September 30th, provided the parties are, negotiating. So nothing would have to be done. The current management contract could remain in place as it is until September 30th, provided we're in negotiation. My hope is that it would take much less time than 5 months to resolve these issues. I think sitting down at a table together and talking things through, we could get to a solution fairly quickly, one would hope.
So you're really looking at if you can sit down at the table and have that negotiation, so that you're looking at possibly a much less time,
a couple of months at the most, I would hope.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Eric has a question. Eric?
Yeah, just wondering how close do you see yourself in negotiation? So how are we really close? Are the CA and the villages are they pretty close as far as what's being requested, or are you still seeing significant gaps in what's being requested?
It's hard to say, Eric, because without having the opportunity to talk things through and discuss them, I really don't know.
Okay. All right, I have Ashley and then Colin.
Thank you for representing the various villages here tonight. So it's my understanding that our role as the board is not to grant an extension. We would be demanding an extension of the staff, right? Because the board is not historically involved in the contract management negotiation. However, from repeated conversations that we've had, because obviously this has been a topic for many of us for an ongoing for a while. So would it be reasonable in your opinion right now, because the issue with demanding an extension is different if there's a chance, as you mentioned, Sean has already reached out to do negotiations, and from the sounds of it, you think you could reach the right terms if you just have the right people in the room. So we have a board meeting in 2 weeks. It seems very likely that you could have reached a conclusion, agreed upon terms by our next meeting, and then we could determine if we were going to demand an extension.
I mean, it's possible. I don't know. I can't speak to how likely it is that we could, within 2 weeks, come to an agreement because, like I said, we've had no opportunity to discuss the gaps in understanding. So the gaps, they may be harder to overcome than I think they are. So I hesitate to say that we could get it done in 2 weeks. The main thing right now that I really think is important is I have the memorandum in front of me that says that the villages must sign these agreements by September or by April 22nd, or else we will not be funded for the first quarter. That, to me, is not great. I don't know how to say it nicely. I think that you guys do need to direct staff to fund the villages regardless of whether the agreements have been signed, because we cannot operate without our assessment share funding. We'll be forced to cut programs and all kinds of fun stuff. So,
got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Colin.
Thank you again for coming out tonight. It's appreciated. So I keep hearing that there's gaps in understanding, and I just, what I heard, so correct me if I misheard, but if you were to get, if you were to have a meeting with senior staff early next week, you'd be amenable to having that conversation and seeing where things are at that point.
Absolutely. I know Steve and I would love to sit down with senior staff and talk about the concerns that we have, and I really do think that some of the issues could be resolved by simple conversation. There might be further sticking points, I don't know, because I haven't had that opportunity. But really, I really would like to work together to solve these problems.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Eric has his hand up again.
Yeah, this is not really a question, but I just wanted to make a note that our next meeting in 2 weeks is April 24th, and sounds like the deadline that CA is presenting is April 22nd. So we don't actually have a meeting between now and the deadline that was testified to.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. All right. Next, Lynn Locke.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good evening. My name is Lynn Locke, Executive Director and Village Manager of the Columbia Town Center Residential Community Association. Thank you all for your service to the Columbia community and your work as volunteers. We support Laura Mayton's remarks this evening from the Hickory Ridge Community Association and would like to add a few more comments. The Town Center Community Association does not support the two contracts as presented to all the villages on March 7th, called the Facility Management Agreement and the Grant Share Agreement. 7 other villages joined Town Center and also agree that the agreements do not represent the outcome of a good faith negotiation. The CA staff cut off the process on March 7th. We want to work together to reach an equitable solution to all issues and think we can do that, and we think we're close. Last night at the Town Center Board meeting, I asked Mr. Colin Sullivan to bring up to the CA Board and to CA staff the following. Number 1, ask the CA staff to fund the Town Center Village and all villages before May 1, 2025, even if they do not sign Columbia Association's contract sent to all villages on March 7th by Judell Campbell of CA. All villages were given a deadline of April 22nd with the veiled threat, quote, "It may delay the distribution of funds," end of quote. Number 2, that I asked Mr. Sullivan last night and it's sort of been accomplished early this evening. Ask the CA Board to put the management contract on the agenda tonight and vote for the extension of the management contract that we requested in the village's joint letter on March 26th sent to all villages to Sean McInnes, Chair Bill Santos, and the entire Board of Directors. 3, advocate for mediation of the two contracts with binding arbitration on both parties to agree to the management contracts and or the resolution or outcome as determined by a national or Maryland state certified mediator. These are all reasonable requests and show good faith negotiations. At $83 million plus in revenue, CA is 195 times bigger than the smallest village and 101 times bigger than the largest village, which is Harper's Choice. This is truly a David and Goliath type issue in terms of revenue disparity. When you suggest, or even with a veiled threat, that you are going to withhold funding from villages, that puts fear into village employees' hearts, fear in the residents of each village, and concern from vendors and clients that may have upcoming events at our facilities. That is why the community is angry and united. Regardless of whether or not Dorsey Search signed your documents or Owen Brown will sign or may sign, we stand resolute that we collectively want a negotiation extension the same way as we granted an extension to CA last year when you asked. Deb Young, who stood with us at the last 2 CA board meetings, could not be here tonight as she is at an event for the new Howard County Inspector General. She asked me to share the following quote with you. Quote, "I stand with my 5 villages and ask that you fund all villages by May 1, regardless of whether or not they sign your March 7th documents. I trust that binding mediation on both contracts can resolve the issue with both parties fairly quickly, and we can all get back to being happy Columbians. Thank you for your consideration and your attention." Any questions?
All right. Karen has a question for you.
So Lynn, I think what you're saying is, so Ashley had asked Laura, should the board demand an extension? And I think what you're saying is, and based on what Eric said about when the deadline is, we actually do, you're saying we do need to vote on the extension tonight. We need to demand
Well,
it.
I'm not a lawyer, and Laura is our negotiator as well as Steve. And I think Laura, and it's very clear in our letter that we sent back on March 26th that I have here, that we think an extension is actually invoked, and we have an extension. But why don't you figure it out with CA staff and the CA board? You're well equipped to do that, and we look forward to a fair decision for all parties.
Okay, thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Reg?
Good evening, Mr. Locke. Thank you for joining
Hi, Reg.
us.
How are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Excellent.
All right. So I heard that you had asked Colin to try to push 3 things for us as a board, to represent you as a board to speak, how you feel about this. I'm stumbling here because I'm trying to get the words out. because I'm really concerned that if we continue down this road, we're going to miss an opportunity to continue to be Columbia the way that we were meant to be. But what do you hope by having further discussions? What is the purpose behind further discussions? Why do you want to see additional comment?
Well, that is something that Laura and Steve can answer, but we find that there's some things in the facilities management agreement and the grant share agreement that we would like to negotiate. And we think that we can reach a fair and equitable agreement. If we can't reach resolution meeting directly, then we get a mediator, and both sides should agree beforehand that we will accept the outcome so that we're not driving up legal fees in the process and we don't reach an agreement.
Okay, and what I am hearing is, and it speaks very clearly to me, that you're really hoping, or you think that this can be resolved by sitting down and talking and having a discussion with the right people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
And if we do that, then we could possibly resolve this fairly quickly. But if not,
absolutely.
If not, we would have to extend and go into additional time to negotiate. And how much time do you think is necessary?
I think it can be done fairly quickly, but it depends on the issues, as Laura said earlier.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You know, Council Member Deb Young does not want to show up at CA board meetings. She wants everything to be happy and kumbaya and everything good in the community. So we want all villages to be united, and we would like to move forward as a collective group and work with CA on all of our projects and the important work that you have to do as a CA board.
Thank you, Mr. Locke.
Just a quick question for you, Lynn. Did Deb Young tell you that she doesn't want to show up at CA board meetings?
I'm not going to, she will show up anytime at CA board meetings, Mr. Santos. I'm saying regarding this issue where the villages are upset, so don't put words in my mouth.
I just want to be clear on that. Those words were out there, so.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, last meeting you said that you didn't want to grant an extension to us, so.
That's not entirely true either. I said I didn't want to grant an extension unless we had terms. Complete sentences work. Okay, Mr. Horowitz.
Evening.
Hi, Joel.
Record, Joel Horowitz speaking tonight as a resident and candidate for the Harper's Choice Village Board. First, I give my support to the previous two speakers, except for the arbitration comments. I've lost count of how many times I've spoken to and emailed the board about the Columbia Association operational policy for voting in Village Community Association elections. I spoke to the last resident speaker about how CA is not a member of Dorsey's search for voting purposes. The email response from the present CEO shows he was clueless about what I had said and even remained so after I further commented. Policy begins, the Village Community Associations hold elections for the Village Community Associations Board and for Columbia Council representatives. The Columbia Association owns land in each village, is therefore entitled to cast votes in the Village Community Association elections for the Columbia Council representative seats. I've said many times that this last statement is legally and factually untrue. Policy continues, in order to avoid actual or perceived conflict of interest, the Columbia Association has adopted the following procedures for each village in which Columbia Association can cast votes. The shall cast ballots in Village Community Association elections for quorum purposes only. The Columbia Association does not support or oppose in any way candidates running for Village Community Association Board of Directors or Columbia Council representatives. Continues, the Columbia Association shall not cast ballots for any candidate running for the Village Community Association Board or Directors or Columbia Council representative. Yet still demonstrating his willful ignorance of the policy, the president emailed, "I'm not following your logic of the votes. I believe CA's policy is to contribute its votes to the candidate with the most votes in the general election, so CA has no impact on the results," end quote. The policy says votes are for quorum purposes only and not for candidates. I contacted the board and asked you if you knew when the letters would be sent into the policy. I have not received an answer to that question. The president, CEO, fulfilling my original view that he does not really care about resolving this issue in a timely manner, concluded his email 2 weeks ago. CA is a large organization working on a variety of initiatives to maintain and improve this amazing community. We receive requests for information from many residents, agencies, businesses, etc. Prioritize and reply in a timely manner as possible. Oftentimes, this means we have to wait we have to wait for responses. We appreciate your continued patience. This afternoon, I emailed President, and I don't have enough time to read everything I wrote, but I reiterated the number of times I've contacted you and him and the board and asked why the policy was omitted from the policy review. Time is up. I have no more patience. Do you intend to follow the policy on voting in the village elections this month? When are the letters being sent? To which villages does CA intend to vote? Furthermore, does CA even care that is not a voting member under the covenants of most of the villages? And I conclude now, if CA is not going to follow the policy, then it needs to be rescinded.
All right, thank you, Joel. Any questions? Karen,
Hey, Joel.
where's that coming from?
I'm sorry, Colin's giving us a musical background.
Sorry.
Time's up.
Take a moment.
Joel, I know that you wrote about this in your blog, and that you have the policy that you're referencing. It's not in the packet that John produced for all of us when we had the work session on policies. When was the policy about the voting from the CA board? When did they pass that policy? Can you give me a date?
Yes, the bottom of the page it says approved January 26, 2023.
Is that the policy that says that that CA can vote to make quorum?
Correct.
Are there any other policies?
It came after the issues with Lakey Boyd deciding not to vote in the 2022 election in Harper's Choice.
Okay, so we probably need to review that. Okay, John, have you seen that policy?
Yes, and when it was pointed out that it was inadvertently not included, it was included in the.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's in our packet. Okay,
right
yeah, okay, good, perfect.
Right here, if you'd like to see it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
I'll be happy to talk about it.
Okay, good. Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, anyone else? No? All right, and that concludes our resident speak out for this evening. Thank you, everybody, for participating. We're going to move on to our main agenda items. First is the consent agenda.
Yes.
So, let me get it out. And then, you're getting ready, right? Let me get it out. Is there any objection to the consent agenda?
Yes, there is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So on the March 13th minutes, we noted that Bob Dover was a resident of Harper Ridge. He is actually a resident of Long Ridge. I'm having trouble here. Long Ridge, thank you.
And just for clarity, we have 2 minutes from that particular date, March 13th. That would be the 7 p.m. meeting?
Yes.
Just wanted to be precise about that. I want to make sure we got our minutes right. So.
Roger that.
Okay. I'm going to say accepting that amendment. Can we now approve the minutes?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other objection? All right, so they are approved. Very good. Moving on to old business. Karen, I'm hitting every single, agenda item in order this tonight.
There you go.
Right. Clock's right twice a day, right? So, all right, old business. First item on the agenda, proposed funding for emergency cash reserves. We have indicated on the agenda that a vote will take place on this item. Sean?
Yes, at the last meeting, Susan Krabbe presented the memo on the emergency cash reserve. She's here to answer any questions, but it's up to the board to take a vote.
Okay, let me start the queue here. Colin, you're first, and...
We have to make a motion.
I was just about to do that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Colin.
A move to approve as presented in the packet.
I'll second.
Okay, Colin and Karen. That's where we want to go. Thank you. Further discussion, Karen?
I have questions. Susan, every year the board budgets an amount to go into the emergency reserves. Why is that amount not sufficient?
So I don't think it's a question of sufficiency. It's a question of what would be available and a good decision at this point because there is no allocation for that funding for next year in the plan or for 27. So this would move you along and take the pressure off of the future periods. And it's only available, it's budgeted, but it can only be funded if the funds are available. So it isn't something that can be done as a guarantee in the FY26 budget or the 25 budget. So this would just be helping the organization get to its targeted amount without pressure on future periods.
I have a follow-up. Okay. I'm sorry, Susan, I have a follow-up for this one. I'm not sorry. I mean, I need to ask my question. So you're saying that, so the board budgeted, in the budget, we've got money set aside, we've got money designated, I should say, to go to the reserve fund.
We have cash designated to go to the emergency cash reserves if the cash is generated.
Okay. And I mean, I know what's going on in the outside world. Do you believe that when the board budgeted this year that was insufficient, that there's what is the risk of us not achieving that? I mean, that's what I'm concerned about.
So the fact that the program the funding had to be allocated over 7 fiscal years is the risk, right? And that is a long time. We've spread it out because the organization, there was just, wasn't clear whether the organization could do it in any better time period than that. But that's a really long time to get to full funding. So that is an issue of adequacy, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Eric has his hand up. Eric?
Yes, I'm a little concerned with this additional ask. So last year in our budget, we allocated $3 million for this cash reserve. And now we want to go over that by $5 million. Meanwhile, last year we also had motions to reduce the annual charge by I think it was roughly $2 million or so. This year we've had motions to reduce pool costs, and every time these motions come up, the message that comes back to us is we don't have the resources to do that. So the question I have is, why do we all of a sudden have additional resources to put additional money that's well above budget, that we budgeted for, and yet we don't have resources to provide similar savings to residents?
So this is a one-time cash in addition, and it's not $5 million over, it's $2 million, just to make that clear. And it doesn't have an ongoing effect as the other recommendation or motions did, and it wasn't clear until the third quarter of the year whether this was going to be the case or not.
Okay. Ashley and then Mike.
Great. So I think the staff did a great job of outlining why it is that we are ahead and also where this would put us, which is 86% of funding what our 2028 goal is. And it would relieve the pressure again for next year when it's a lot more uncertain economically.
Okay. Mike. Okay. All right. So any other? Eric has his hand up. Colin?
I was going to call the question.
Oh, Eric has his hand up, and then I'll go to you, Colin.
So if we want to relieve the pressure for next year, would it make sense if we approve $5 million this year, would it make sense to have a budget addendum for next year that reduces the amount we contribute to the cash reserves from $3 million to $1 million? That way it would balance. If that is the worry that we need to relieve the pressure for next year, would it make sense just to say, okay, next year it's only $1 million instead of $3 million?
I think that next year you'll know whether there's that is attainable or not. I don't think an amendment is necessary. I think that the board will be able to identify that probably 6 months into the year easily.
Okay. All right, Colin.
I'd like to make an amendment to this.
Oh. All right. What is your amendment, Eric?
I'd like to amend it to reduce it to $3 million.
So So you want to reduce the emergency fund, emergency cash reserves.
To 3 million as budgeted for. And I'd like us to look at the other 2 million and see how can we use this to provide direct services back to the residents.
Isn't that just voting no?
Yeah.
That's not even, that's just voting against this.
I think they're right, Eric. If we vote no, then we would probably just default to the 3 million contribution, right?
No, that's not the case. We actually have to allocate it either way.
It's not allocated, I'm sorry, no, it's not allocated in the budget?
No, we have to. So there's two parts. There's the budgeted part, which we budgeted for last year. So this comes from last year's budget action. So when we did the last year in the budget process for FY25, we put the 3 million for the cash reserves on the budget. But to actually take the action of putting the 3 million in the cash reserves would require this vote.
Right. I think Eric's right on this. Now, does Eric have a second on this?
I'll second it.
Karen seconds the amendment. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, I'd like someone to explain it to me.
Sure. I mean, I'll give it to you in my layman's terms, and hopefully somebody will correct me when I stray. But generally, I mean, after COVID, there was the establishment of an emergency cash reserves fund. And in order to get to the $18 million, which CA figured out that's what they need in cash reserves, or if we had another pandemic, they would need about that much money to get through that initial tranche there. We started putting money away through votes at the end of each year towards that cash reserve. Okay, we've identified money for that. That's been going on for several years. The current value of it now is approximately $11 million. Is that right? Pretty close.
11 million, yeah. 7,153,333.
Layman terms discussion, 11 million probably carries the day. This year, we are projected to have an increase in net assets above what we anticipated. And staff has said we should take some of that money from the increase in net assets and put it into this emergency cash reserve fund this year. Instead of 3 million, which is our typical for each year, make it 5 million, because there is a great deal of uncertainty as to whether we will have $3 million available next year to contribute to that fund.
I'm just trying to follow Eric's.
Does that help?
Yeah,
Does that help?
trying to follow.
So what Eric is saying, he doesn't believe, and I don't want to, Eric, I'm going to try and do this right. He thinks that it would be best to just contribute just the 3 million that we originally budgeted for and do something else with the 2 million, I would suppose. We haven't gotten that far yet, but he's saying we should just do 3 million.
Yeah, so that's the idea. I also have a concern that if we think that we budget 3 million and we think that's not going to be there, where's it going? Because if we don't put the $2 million in the cash reserve, it's not like it disappears. We still have it. So I've got a concern here that if we don't think that money is going to, if we budgeted 3 million next year and we don't think it's going to be there, how does that affect the rest of the budget? I mean, we passed the budget assuming that we'll be roughly close to all these numbers. So I'm getting concerned now.
All right. That's an open question. Mike, you had a comment?
That's the point of having the cash reserve, is that economic conditions might get worse and we might not be able to, we might miss our budget next year and we might need to tap into the cash reserve. And that's why it's a good thing to put more money into it now. That's the whole point.
Yeah. My understanding of this, Eric, would be that based on where we are now, there is a scenario in which when we get to this time next year, 365 days from now, instead of having an increase in net assets of like $8 or $9 million, we'll have an increase in net assets of $1 million. And that won't be sufficient in order to contribute to the cash reserve fund. So because we've got the money this year, I believe staff is saying add a little more this year just to make sure that we get to it next year. Now, you get to 16 million next, if we do this, we get to 16 million. If 18 million is our goal, we could get 2 million and we could declare success, and then we can talk about other things.
I'm confused here. So if we put 3 million or we put 5 million, say we put 3 million instead of 5 million, and then you're saying we won't have that money next year to put it in the cash reserves next year. The question I have is, if we don't put the extra $2 million in this year, where's that money go? And how does that money disappear? And where's that money? Why couldn't that same $2 million just be used next year? And where's that money going?
That's a little
confused.
beyond what we're talking about here, but generally, CA's expenses outrun our income if you don't consider the annual charge money, right? So this would go towards purchasing items throughout the year. Colin,
I'd
and
like
then
to
Karen.
call the question on the amendment.
Call the question on the amendment, all right? Here we go.
You've got to get the end cut thing, you've got to do the thing to do the two-thirds of everybody has to agree to it. And I think it's really unfair to call the question now. There's a lot of substantive discussion that still has to happen.
What?
Let's do the vote.
Oh, okay. All right, well, then we will do the two-thirds to do this.
Can you repeat the amendment?
Yes, the amendment is to reduce the emergency cash reserve, how do I say this?
Contribution.
The allotment
from
of the
5 million to
emergency
3
cash
million.
reserve from $5 million to the
3 million.
originally
Budgeted $3 million.
budgeted $3 million. That is the amendment.
But we're
First, we
voting
have to
to end
vote to
the
cut off
We are
discussion.
now going to vote to end discussion.
Yeah.
Okay? The vote to end discussion here. Ashley,
Yes.
Sky,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Reg,
No.
Karen,
No.
Mike,
Yes.
Eric,
No.
Colin,
Yes.
yes, and I vote yes.
Did you get Sky?
Oh, I'm sorry, Sky,
She said yes.
Oh, she said
Did she
yes.
voted?
you said yes.
I'm sorry, Sky.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 to 3.
That's two-thirds.
Okay, so we will call the question. We will start with,
This is Eric's amendment.
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry, we'll call the question on Eric's amendment.
Thank you.
And Sky, I'll say it again just so we're clear. This is to reduce rather than $5 million going to emergency cash reserves, $3 million to cash reserves. Okay, we will start with Eric,
Yes.
Colin,
No.
Ashley,
No.
Sky,
No.
Paul,
No.
Reg,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Mike,
No.
and I will vote no. So that is 3 in favor.
Could we call the question on the main motion now?
Well, let me just
Sure.
read out the I'm getting there.
Mike's biting at the bit.
We can't do all of these by unanimous consent, so it's 3 in favor. That's 6 opposed, no abstentions. Mike,
I would like to call the question
call a question on
on the proposal to put $5 million
$5
in
million
cash reserve.
to the emergency cash reserves. Okay. Ready? Sky,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Reg,
Yes.
Karen,
No.
Mike,
Yes.
Eric,
No.
Colin,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that's,
And Ashley votes yes.
I'm sorry, Ashley. I was just counting, I didn't get that right, so yeah. 7, 2, 0. My apologies, Ashley. I'm very sorry. Okay. Motion passes 7,
Point of information, I thought there were 3 no's.
7 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions.
I thought I heard 3 no's online.
Eric, could you say that again? I'm sorry.
I thought I heard 3 no's.
Reg said
No,
yes.
I thought Paul said no.
Paul, what was your vote on this?
Yes.
It was a yes from Paul.
Oh, it was a yes, sorry, I misheard.
You know,
Sorry
I
about that.
understand you're not in the room. I can understand that happening. No problem. Thank you
Yeah,
for asking.
I heard yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is CA headquarters building purchase option. Sean?
Yes, well, Susan Krabbe, she's been working with our commercial brokers, and they're here, but she can do the introductions. And
So while Jamie Smith and Charlie Fenwick make their way up to the table here, just wanted to introduce these gentlemen to you. Jamie Smith as Vice Chair for Cushman and Wakefield, has many years of experience in commercial real estate, and the team, Jamie and Charlie together, have been working and advising CA for at least the last 10 years. They were engaged to provide commercial real estate advice and services. They were essential in getting us into this space here. So Charlie Fenwicks, the managing director for Cushman & Wakefield, both Jamie and Charlie have extensive history and experience in Columbia and Howard County. Offices were here until recently. And they've been they are tenant representatives for the most part, and so have been real advocates for CA. So they've been helping us through analyzing the building purchase options. So as you know, the lease for this space includes a fixed purchase option. So there's a term in there that the board at the time it was essential to the board at the time, CA board at the time, that there would be an ownership opportunity in the lease, and that's our team here was able to negotiate that for us. So the notice date to the property owner, to the landlord, is April 30, 2025, with an exercise, our effective date of closing the purchase would be next April. So I just asked Jamie and Charlie to walk through their analysis and where we are at this point. So thanks.
Thank you, Susan. That was a very nice introduction and comprehensive. We were going to provide some background, but to move along, I think you were very comprehensive. The one comment we could make, if we focused it right down to this park, Charlie and/or I have been involved in the sale of 6 buildings just in this park alone. Our focus geographically goes well beyond, of course, this park. It's the county and the neighboring counties, but we've been very, very active here in the park. And also, we've not only been involved in 6 different sales buildings here in the park, but leasing in almost every building in the park. So we were intimately familiar with the market and the existing product. So the topic today is when we negotiated the lease approximately 5 years ago. It was made, CA made us well aware that obtaining the option to purchase, their long-term goal would be to own your building. And so most sellers of real estate are reluctant to put something that in an agreement, but the owner did agree finally to put something in. But they set a pretty high ceiling on what the number would be, or if we want to call it a threshold to get over. And the number was $250 a square foot. We had, is that going to show up on the slide? Yeah, it was just up there. I saw it earlier. Yep. So the reason this is of importance now is the notification date is April 30th of this month. So if you decide you want to proceed with the exercise of the option, we need to provide written notification to the landlord by the end of this month. If you decide to go ahead and purchase it at the price that's in the agreement, and just again to be clear on that, it's based on, everything in real estate is on unit pricing. It's based on $250 a foot, which works out to a $10.8 million number. So if you decided to go ahead, the effective date for the sale would be a year following the notification date. So the settlement date would be August of 2026. Charlie and I have been consulting with CA and with Susan, and then more recently with Sean, on valuation. We've been tracking this, and we've been tracking this for 2 or 3 years. And where we currently are is, and that's, should I change this? You can, Charlie, if you want to.
There you go. There you go.
I don't know if you can read that, but they were the notice dates and the effective dates. But this is a kind of a summary of where we would get to on valuation. As I had mentioned, everything in real estate's on unit pricing. The first thing we did was looked at building sale comps. and we looked at recent comps and comps that have occurred over the past few years. And the range for sale comps that we're seeing is 140 to 165 a square foot. And that's really not the low and the high. That's kind of the median. The low goes lower than that, and the high goes a little bit higher. In
These
extenuating.
are suburban office product, single and multi-story, mostly multi-story in that range.
So on the other approach to identifying value is an income approach. And that's if a third-party investor is going to buy real estate in today's market here in Columbia or anywhere in the country, they're going to look at it from an investment approach. And there's a software system, it's called Argus. And what you do is you populate that with all the relevant information, primarily the lease and the rental rate and the operating expenses. And then you make assumptions on the risk associated with retaining that over a 10-year period, and then you solve for a return. And I don't want to get too complicated here, but it's basically market-driven returns. It's referred to as cap rates, and the cap rates that typically would be utilized in this market today for this kind of product would be like a 9.5% cap rate. And so based on the income approach that we've done with the analysts in our office, and we have this backup material has been shared with Sean and Susan, the price per square foot that an investor would pay for the building is $142 a square foot. The third method, and this is the method that sellers like buyers to use, but very few buyers are willing to use this method today, is the reproduction costs. Because of inflation and the cost of pricing, it's off the charts what it would cost to replace this building today, starting from the ground up. And that range number is about $375 a foot. So if you looked at the numbers on the sale comps, it's worth somewhere in the range of $6 to $7 million. On the income approach, it's worth about $6 million. On the replacement costs, it's a much higher number, but it's our experience that I was going to say very few. I was going to say no one is buying buildings today based on replacement costs.
And you won't see, because of inflation, because of the lack of demand for office space, you will not see much new product being built. The market's approximately 35 million square feet. We expect that to stay that way for the next 5 years. I mean, you will not see much, but it was growing at a much higher rate through the 90s or end of the 90s, 2000 really to 2020. So you just won't see much of it built because the pricing doesn't work.
And like an extreme example of the replacement costs in some submarkets, like a Baltimore City, where there's high-rise office buildings, and it would cost $500 or $600 for the replacement cost for those buildings. Some of those buildings, because they're functionally obsolete, there's really almost like very limited use for them. They're selling for like $50, even though the reproduction cost is $500. Yeah, there's that drastic of a change. So you have to be careful to don't get caught up on the replacement costs. I think that's kind of our. Maybe we could pause there and then go to the next page to see if there's any questions.
It's Paul?
Yeah, I have a question. So the owner of this building, they're not willing to look at the current comps. I mean, I know that there's this option on the table, but they're not looking at the comps and saying, oh, well, maybe that's more accurate. Is that the case right now?
The ownership is an institutional group, okay, and they have a fiduciary relationship to all of their investors, and they're because 250 is in the contract.
Right.
They're not going to respond. So we've communicated with them and said we are interested in the building. We've been transparent in that regard, but we said the 250 number just doesn't make sense. Would you consider a lower number? And they said at this point we just want to abide by what the contract says.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
And once that expires, then there is a strategy to then, to then re-engage with them. Just.
And I would just say too, that this is an open meeting, so we just want to remind everyone that that's, we're going to be aware, but that was no problem. I'm just an overabundance of caution here.
Fair point. And I just want to take this time because we have the presentation going. Eric, did you have a question at this pausing point?
Not a question, but based on what I heard, I moved that we decline the headquarters purchase option.
I appreciate that. I want to give these gentlemen their ability to get through the presentation, but I'll go directly to you once they're done. Okay, Eric?
What did Eric say, though? He wanted
to
decline
the offer and just end the evening at this point. But I wanted to give you a chance to.
If there's any mystery here,
the motion to decline
we're
it.
in agreement. Going in the same direction. So
I hear that. But you put time in this. I would like you to go ahead and have your moment. So please do.
Good. On our next page, we talked about something that you should be aware of is, do you want to?
Yeah, no, go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, is that you've created a very appropriate and quality design for what you've done here in the building, and that doesn't come without a cost. So if you were to look at alternative properties, there's a cost there that's associated with that, and so there is some value there. Also, we support your interest in ownership because of your long-term horizon. And we oftentimes recommend clients that have a shorter horizon of 5 or 7 or 8 years that it might not be cost effective to purchase. Once if you're willing to commit to something beyond 10 and you're looking perhaps at a 10 to 20 year horizon, it does, from a long-term perspective, there is a lot of benefit to ownership. The third point we made was our recommendation on where we think, where we believe the building value is. And we provided a pretty wide range, and what it results is a number of somewhere in the 6.3 to 7.6 million, but well below the 10.8 million that the option is for. So to conclude, our recommendation, or something you might consider, is we've agreed with Sean and Susan that we will keep them aware of every building that comes available in the market, and some have come available, and Sean and Susan have taken the time to go see it, to start to use that as a comparison. Another building came available just this week, and it will be very interesting to track the pricing on that. And for most buildings, when they go to market, they don't, unlike residential, they don't put a price on them. They said it's make an offer. But the broker will usually give you a range of, at least a range of what to expect. And this new building that came on the market, it's a building in Columbia Gateway, was favorably priced, even below the range price that we provided for the BOV on this building.
Okay.
So that further supports the number. I guess
And I think just in the point is, we've had conversations with the ownership. There are 2 parcels here. It's a very large building. Building portfolio. I think it's probably, maybe 100 buildings that RMR, the owner, is managing. And so this building and the single-story building, they don't want to just carve out one building. That's another issue besides pricing, is carving out one building and then leaving the single-story building is probably something, it would be a challenge for an institution to think like that, think entrepreneurial. They may have some interest in both buildings, but probably one is going to be difficult.
All right. Thank you very much. Colin has a question, I see.
So I've never had to purchase commercial real estate before. So this might be a dumb question, but I am wondering, and you may not even be able to answer it, but I'm wondering about interest rates. Can you say anything about that? Is it similar to residential interest rates? And I, again, recognize that there's a ton of factors, but I'm just wondering if that's something to take into account.
Yeah, so interest rates do play a role in the ecosystem of commercial real estate. Return to office plays a similar type of role. So I think the higher the interest rates, the less lending, and overall, it might, the active buyers might not be there. So it's definitely a barrier to entry. Regarding CA and purchasing, I leave that to Susan to say how interest rate might affect your balance sheet and things like that. But Jamie and I deal with what is the price per pound and what are we getting it for based on comps and things like that. And then the how it's financed and things like that would be based on your balance sheet. Yeah. And I think you guys have a lot of good stuff regarding that. So you're not, some buyers are, we had a building fell out of contract this week because they could not get up enough equity for the financing of a $5 million sale. So, that plays a role in things. So, Susan, I don't know if you want to answer that.
Yeah, so the current interest rate environment impacts us as well in that rates are certainly higher. What the last, so CA issued or obtained a term loan from a bank in 2020, in June of 2020, at 2.5%. That obviously is not going to happen again, but I think that we would market that competitively. It would be an open and competitive process for lenders to submit proposals on, and I think it would be favorable. It's we're a AA plus credit, so it wouldn't look like it used to, but it would be, I think, competitive with what the market would enable.
Yeah, CA would be in a good position. At one point, the Whole Foods building in Town Center was for sale, and everyone would talk about Whole Foods, and and selling those things, it's just the credit. How good is the credit? And at the time, I believe CA's credit was better than Whole Foods credit, and so we're a CA fan, so Whole Foods. I'm like, well, no, CA's we're better. So.
All right, okay. Anything else? All right, gentlemen, thank you for your presentation tonight. Definitely good food for thought. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Eric?
Yes, I move that we decline the headquarters purchase option.
Say it again, Eric.
I move that we decline the option to purchase the headquarters.
Okay, and Mike seconds. Any discussion on this? All right. This one deals with money, so I'm going to ask for individual votes on this. So, and I promise to get everybody on this. Here we go. Ashley.
I don't want to buy it. I don't remember how it was phrased.
Yes, it's a yes.
The motion was to decline the offer to purchase.
Great, yes.
So, yes. Sky?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yep.
Eric?
Yes.
Thank you, Eric. Colin?
Yes.
And I say yes. That is 90094. There we go, unanimous. Moving on. CA Board Goals Updates. Natural Resources Plan.
Yes, Jeremy can do the introductions.
There we go, just really quick, hold on. Sorry about that. All right.
Crack them if you got them.
Yeah, it's just a Diet Coke, friends. Easy.
Another time.
I can get the funnel if you want.
Gotta hit the home run.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much. So as part of staff's ongoing sort of status updates and reporting on our progress associated with the board goals that were established at the beginning of the fiscal year, Danielle Tyre is here, who is our sustainability manager. She will be reporting out on the Natural Resources Management Plan Community Charrette that was executed in March, so just a few weeks ago. Let's see. Okay, so I'm just going to go over real quick, just to kick us off in terms of a little bit of sort of background and sort of vision around the Natural Resources Management Plan itself and how it was envisioned when we proposed it at the beginning of the fiscal year. Okay, I'll keep trucking. So the vision is that, the development of an overarching sustainability synthesis document that builds upon best management practices as well as the current state of the science that's happening right now around sort of environmental sustainability and all the different things that are happening around that focus area. So our program has been guided for several years based on several documents. One is the Columbia Watershed Management Plan from 2009. The other is our forest. Here we go. All right. I just kept going. Even the chaos, right? Steady, rock steady. So the forest stewardship plan that was developed in 2016. We have our climate vulnerability assessment that was prepared in 2019. There's also numerous sort of external and internal guiding documents that we reference around our operations and how we manage open space in our sustainability programming. There's external standards for how pesticides are applied. There's standards for how different assets are managed. There's our internal programming guidance documents around renewable energy and energy efficiency. We have internal documents around invasive management, for example. So the goal is to try to build upon all these existing resources and to synthesize those into one sort of cohesive unit to lead us into the future around what are our priorities. And sort of the other aspect of this too is to make sure we're actively engaging the community. We are blessed to have a tremendous amount of community engagement around our sustainability program. The CARES groups, you all know those individuals very well. Kate Riley, others throughout the community are really active. They're really passionate. And so, in terms of building upon the Natural Resources Management Plan, making sure those individuals are part of that process so that they can carry forward into the future to help implement those goals. Because that's sort of really where we can achieve more than we can otherwise with sort of just staff and contractors, for example. And so with that quick sort of background and intro, I'll hand it over to Danielle to go through some of the details of the community charrette that she led a couple weeks ago.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
All right, I'm Danielle Tyre, Sustainability Manager for CA. So as Jeremy mentioned, we had a community charrette, an input meeting with the community about 2 weeks ago on March 25th. So it was a hybrid format. We wanted to have it open to people whether they could attend in person or not. So they could attend virtually via a Zoom webinar link, or they could attend in person. It was held right here in this room. We wanted it to be not village specific, so this is a very neutral location, which is why we chose to have it here. So the format, it was a hosted survey using an online platform called Mentimeter. All responses were captured electronically. We worked with a consultant. We used Tetra Tech. They moderated the meeting. They helped us develop the questions. And they have sent us a really big output report that we're still synthesizing on our end, but I wanted to present some initial findings to you all here today. So the community charrette, it was 90 minutes long. We had 25 questions. It worked out to be about 3 minutes a question. And we had 47 attendees. So we had 19 in person, and at the max, there were 28 people online virtually. Our icebreaker question was, what do you value about CA's natural resources? So on the screen, you can see it's a word cloud. So how this worked is we asked participants to submit a word or phrase to answer the question, what do you value about CA's natural resources? And the more times that submission was received, the larger the words get. So if you see trees is probably the one that's in there the most, and then we've got native plants, birds, pathways, a lot of really positive words about CA's natural resources. And then if you look a little closer on the outside, those are the ones that were maybe only submitted one time. And what we noticed is there are a couple common themes where if we grouped them all, some words would probably be even larger. Paths is on there multiple times, streams are on there on the periphery as well. So it seems the community does really value our open spaces and these beautiful areas we're so lucky to have throughout Columbia. What were the goals of this meeting? So we internally have talked about some focus areas for the natural resource management plan, but we wanted to get the community's feedback on what we were thinking. We want to learn what amenities the community enjoys. We wanted to learn where the community's priorities lie. What are some benefits that people are aware of and using? And are there any changes that we should consider moving forward in our management strategies? All right, so initial results and findings. We asked participants, what do you care most about? And then the words you see were all some options. They were initially alphabetically ordered so as not to influence rankings, but we've had them switched around so you can easily see where the final rankings lie. And so this was from I care a lot about, these are very important, was a 5, less important is a 0. So it turns out birds and wildlife and then habitats encouraging species diversity ranked really high among this group with a 4.9 out of 5. Lesser ranking was aesthetics and vivid colors, as well as benches or seating along trails. So this is really great insight into what this group values. Next, we asked, what outdoor activity do you enjoy the most? So walking or biking on paths and trails ranked really high again, which is great because we have amazing pathways and trails throughout Columbia. So that was very validating. I also found this question very interesting. So if you look at the bottom, fishing only got a 1.9. This was surprising to me. We actually had a follow-up question on what are your favorite fishing spots? And this group, a lot of them don't fish, which shocked me because I thought everybody fished, but this group did not. This was the bird group. So bird watching, as you can see, birds were very popular among this group of participants. So with a 3.8 for bird watching. So you never know what you're going to come across, but very interesting results here. Oh, sorry, one more thought. We also had a follow-up question, what are your favorite spots for bird watching? And we had some great responses there, unlike fishing. People like bird watching from their backyard. Lake Elkhorn was a top response. Along CA's pathways and trails was also said multiple times, and that was an open-ended follow-up question. So some great insights on where we can go to get good bird pictures or also do some bird watching.
Mike.
Elkhorn, yeah, very popular. How should CA notify you about projects, meetings, and events? So this was a different kind of question. We gave the participants these 7 options, and they could rank them. They could move them around. They didn't have to rank the ones that they don't use. And we wanted to know how we should engage the community. And we said specifically for proposed projects, algal bloom notifications, community education, and outreach was the thought here. So we do a lot of outreach here in CA. And how do people want to be notified about things going on in the community? CA email blast was ranked number 1, followed by village newsletters, which I find very interesting. Just another point of note on this, we did only get about 40-some participants, and one of the main ways we advertised was through a CA email blast. It was in the Do More newsletter. It was also in a couple email blasts and village newsletters as well. So it'll be interesting when we get some more responses to see if those themes still stay true. Rate these proposed focus areas 1 through 5 for the natural resource management plan. So I apologize, it does show up a little bit small, but these are the topic areas that we had come up with internally. I wanted to get the community's feedback and ranking to what they felt was most important. So up at the top, we have reforestation and tree canopy cover. I'm actually surprised that that one was ranked as high as it is, but it's very encouraging because we like planting trees and do a lot with trees here in Columbia. So that's great to hear. Followed by habitat enhancement and community engagement. I also thought community engagement being ranked 3rd was a little bit surprising. In the open-ended questions, a lot of people want more education, more community engagement. So that's a great lesson learned that we can take forward when we're drafting this plan, is how can we do that more? And then tied with community engagement is invasive and native plant communities, which is very timely since we're giving an invasive plant talk in a little bit today. So, all right, so next steps. So as I mentioned, we had about 40-some participants. We have decided to extend the community input survey to give the community more time to provide their input. So we have taken the exact same questions, put them into a form, and that is what that QR code will take you to now. So that QR code is being put on some signs, some of the corrugated sidewalk signs. We're going to put them throughout the community, in open space. They're being printed now. I've got 150 of them that are going to go out. We're also going to put that QR code on our table at Greenfest this Saturday, which gets over 1,000 participants, people showing up. 4,000, yes, thank you. And then we're going to send it out into the village, to the villages as well, to put in their newsletter. So we hope to use what came out of the charrette, which was some great ideas for ways to reach out to the community and give residents more time to provide their input. Yes.
Okay.
What's the deadline for the survey?
So my thought is to have the sidewalk signs out for 2 weeks. I don't have a hard deadline. We'll identify responses as they come in. But great question, because next we want to draft language for the bid to go out to look for that consultant. And I'm thinking we'll have that RFP released around June. So the survey cutoff would be by the time that's awarded.
Okay, so we're going to go Sky and then Mike.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. I was in the audience and Paul was there as well. The two things that I remember most are number 1, trees, and number 2, birds. But I would like to say that I would expect at the end of this survey, the results to be possibly quite a bit different, because at least the 20 people in the audience seem to be the professional people who were members of their CARES group or professionally involved in the topic. So I thought it was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mike?
Are is the extended community engagement, is there a multilingual aspect to this?
Ooh.
Because especially when I see like fishing being rated so low, like anecdotally, a lot of people fishing out there are not speaking English as their first language. And I'm really concerned there's some selection bias in the input that you may be getting.
That is great feedback. Yes, we can look into having multilingual options. During the charrette, people said that it was a different demographic than was present in the room that does the fishing, which again, I didn't think the younger folks were the fisher people, but that's what the groups, yeah, didn't know that. So,
All right,
yes,
I got a
thank you.
couple quick and then we'll move on to others. Habitat enhancement, that seemed pretty wide. Habitat for what?
Habitat enhancement, so improving local habitat for native birds and wildlife.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if it was plants or if it was birds or.
Plants could be included as well, yes.
All right, and
It's a very broad, yes.
I am not shocked that board packets was lowest on the list. I'm required to read them, so I understand that implicitly. And I might be going way out over my skis on this, but the fishing, I mean, I have a son who loved fishing when he was growing up here, and we caught mostly bluegill and catfish and carp.
Yes.
And they're great, but, you know, the birds we have here are some pretty impressive birds. If they were all pigeons and seagulls, I don't know if they'd rank so high, you know.
That's true.
We don't have a lot of variety in the water that my own experience has shown. We may have some trout and perch and things like that, and the odd walleye that got loose or something, but Yeah, I think that may also play into this is.
You
what
do
are
have to
fishing
trout
for?
fish right after they stock the lake.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
trick.
Yeah. So, anybody else? Eric, did you have any comments? All right. Paul?
Thanks, but I've got no further comments.
All right, thank you, Eric. Paul?
Knowing that village newsletters get so much engagement, is this link going to be included, like sent out to villages?
I am going to email it to all the
You are.
villages.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good to know. Thanks.
Can I have a quick comment?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, I don't remember how often the word deer was mentioned that evening, but it's really big, and I'm wondering if you could mention it somewhere in some of the questions rather than just wildlife.
And I did get that feedback when we said wildlife management, and I can actually go back. It ranked pretty low on our proposed focus areas, and I believe that's because they didn't think deer were included when we were talking about wildlife management. So that's great feedback. Yes.
All right. Well then, thanks so much for the presentation. That's a lot of good information. Looking forward to these next milestones here.
Thank you.
All right, Sean, did you have anything to close it out?
No.
Okay,
You did a
cool.
great job. I think we're off to a great start.
Well, then let's move on to the CA Key Benchmarks Review.
All right, another presentation. This one will be quicker.
We'll challenge you on that.
It's true.
Chris is online.
Chris, welcome. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everybody.
So I'll get started. As part of the board's goals that were established in September, one of the goals that was added was how does CA evaluate itself and how it's doing as an organization. So that goal was added, and so much of the information you're going to see tonight, you see throughout the course of the year. Because we keep the board up to date on these things, but I think it's helpful to see it all in a package to show that CA is a vibrant organization. It's in great financial health. It provides great services. So I'll go into some of the detail around that as soon as we have the presentation.
Something is going on with this today.
So on the bottom left. That's it. Okay, thank you. All right, so I will go into the title. There's the 8 goals we established in September, and you've got updates on all of these throughout the course of this last 6 months, and 8 is kind of the organizational excellence goal. As a reminder, it was to advance CA's vision, mission, and values by meeting or exceeding key benchmarks. It addressed key areas prior to the strategic plan that's been adopted. And just to give you an overview, so what are those key benchmarks and how do we kind of articulate those and categorize those? And we did it in 5 different aspects: drive excellence in CA's operations, support CA's long-term fiscal health and stability, manage capital planning and expenditures, enhance stakeholder engagement and expand CA's collaboration within the community, and ensure environmental and sustainability stewardship. So first off, driving excellence CA's operation, we really have it broken up, our programs and services and then our operations. So I'll go into those, just some highlights of our programs and services. Dan Burns was in here in October to talk about, that CA continues to prioritize ensuring accessibility and affordability of our programs and services, particularly for Columbia residents. Some highlights of what we have is right now we have over 17,000 memberships, actually closer to 17,500. and over 55,000 members. That is significant. It's almost half the population, so that's impressive. We have over 2.4 million visits to CA facilities last year, and this operation generates $33 million in revenue. So that's it's significant for our budget. And we've had, for kids, we do a lot of focusing on kids, in that we've had 135 visits to our CA programs serving those kids. And we have, as you may remember, over 50 affordability and accessibility programs that account for about $1.4 million in financial support in programs and services. So that is a robust operation. Next, under community operations, it's timely that you just heard from Jeremy's team, but CA is a leader in environmental and sustainability initiatives, as proven by tonight. Just as they've planted over 500 trees just this year. More importantly, the volunteer management program has more than 2,000 volunteers. That's exceptional, and that's with the organization and management of Jeremy's operation. On top of that, they're in the process of electrifying their fleet and maintenance equipment. Jeremy's been working hard the last few months with BG&E to get a much larger electric line into the facility to accommodate that. And they also provide logistics and support for over 100 community events we have in the community. So the crew is very busy. And then one highlight I have at the bottom is you saw at the last meeting, Jeremy's GIS team presented that new GIS application that has the mapping to the live data, which is our status of pools, programming at our facilities, and also residential information. So that's providing quite a service to the community. Financially, Susan and her team did an amazing job. Our FY26 budget, $86.4 million, but it's only 3.6% above FY25. We're maintaining the annual charge rate at 68 cents, in the 68 cents per 100,000. Importantly, no long-term debt issuances and no uses of the line of credit are projected for FY26. Thanks to tonight, our cash reserves is supplemented, and we're better prepared for the environment that we could be facing in the economy. And this year, you're going to see a new focus on our long-term capital planning and funding. You've heard me talk about that a little bit, but we're going to focus on that to see what is the next 40 to 50 years for Columbia. And lastly, membership rates, there's a modest increase, which is but below inflation of our membership rates, and it's around 3% for members in FY26. So capital planning is a big part about what we do here as well. This year, FY26, we have $14.5 million allocated for capital projects. That's an 11.5% increase over FY25. So CA makes significant investment in its facilities. And also along that line, constant inspections and analysis. So last year, Jeremy's team did 44 parking lot inspections, 174 play areas, 206 bridges. This is all the items that need to be inspected. So that's quite a bit of work to do on a yearly basis. Also, assets are constructed to stay within industry standard for replacements. Anyone that's ever bought a commercial playground equipment jaw has dropped. You look at the price of that stuff. So, and this year, Jeremy's team replaced 7 play areas on the new cluster play area policy, and they're on a 25-year replacement cycle. They also replaced 11 bridges. Most of those are fiberglass bridges, which is really innovative and progressive, and they will probably last a lot longer than the wooden bridges. So they have a 25-year replacement cycle, but probably much longer. They've replaced over $3 miles of pathways, probably for $3 million, with the 25 to 30-year replacement cycle. And also they're always looking to make enhancements accessibility-wise, trying to keep up with ADA requirements. And they've upgraded ADA parking spaces and accessibility routes throughout the community. And then larger capital projects. Many of you have seen Stonehouse and the Art Center renovations that are complete. They really came out great. The historic Oakland elevator, which was partially funded by a $300,000 grant, is under construction. The Supreme Sports Club renovations, another success. Everyone's been very pleased with the outcome of that. And then this year, we'll start the process of constructing the band shell. The timing is different because of the summer months, and that is in line with the $750,000 grant that was received from the state. So it's going to be a great project. All right, this slide is a little busy, and I tried to cram a lot in, but this is under our enhanced stakeholder engagement and expand CA's collaboration within the community. CA partners with over 100 organizations in the community, from nonprofits to community organizations to schools to the county. So Robin Stimson, our community engagement manager, she is out there daily seeing what's going on in the community, relaying what CA does, and trying to partner, not only partner CA with these organizations, but helping these organizations partner with one another. So she does a phenomenal job at that. We also partner with Howard County. We're involved in the Gateway rezoning, the Spending Affordability Advisory Committee I was participated on. Also, we have the Newtown zoning, which is coming up, which we will have CA representation on that as well. And then I am now representing CA on the county executive's new Econ Task Force, which is a high-level group looking to mitigate the upcoming economy, whatever happens with it, but preparing for the worst. As you know, CA organizes hundreds of events and programs. Some examples of that, I could not list them all, but you all know these things like Front Live, Changing Columbia series, the movie nights, Dancing Under the People Tree. We also sponsor a number of events throughout the community. For example, Books in Bloom, Juneteenth, the Pride event. And then lastly, down at the bottom, you can't see that, but what I've initiated this year is a business roundtable. Businesses also pay the annual charge in the community, and CA is sensitive to that, particularly in this environment. So we've put together a roundtable of business leaders in the community that we'll be hosting April 22nd to talk about ways, what are challenges and opportunities the businesses see in the community, how can CA partner better with these businesses to provide a better service to the community. So doing a lot for stakeholder engagement and collaboration. And then ensuring environmental and sustainability stewardship. Jeremy's crew does a great job. They've been in here multiple times the last few months to talk about initiatives that they're doing. Energy management, you heard me talk about that. CA 100% of electric use is offset with clean renewable energy. We're talking about electrifying the fleet. CA operates 10 solar installations as well. And they're constantly looking to implement building energy efficiency initiatives with any of the capital projects that we do. And then resource management, I will not go into that because Danielle gave an excellent presentation on what they do and where they're going with that. So, also under environmental and sustainability stewardship, oh, wait a minute, sorry. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. This is more information on that. They're doing so much. They planted the 500 trees, invasive plant species management. Danielle stole my thunder. She did such a great job. But also importantly, and I mentioned this, volunteering and community engagement. They support over 1,000 community events, the weed warriors, the stream waders, trash cleanups, and to get 2,000 people in the community to volunteer on an annual basis is pretty amazing. So that is in a nutshell what we are doing to promote CA, how we evaluate ourselves on an annual basis and constantly trying to improve, but also trying to provide the best service to the community possible. So.
Okay. Any questions on the benchmarks here? Reg?
Just real quick, we appreciate everything you do with the Stonehouse and the Art Center, but we still have a couple of things on our punch list, and so if I can get with you and kind of discuss that, because
yeah, definitely
still have some issues.
Oh yeah,
there.
Definitely, yes. Let me know.
Thanks.
All right, Ashley.
The list of things that Columbia Association does is astounding. I don't think the average resident has any idea how much work is done, even just the work that you do on the 4th of July event, whenever I'm going there to enjoy it just as a resident. It's amazing, starting with our presence at the various parades early in the day, going all the way through the end of the night, all the different pieces that have to be worked. So amazing job.
All right. Chris, do you have anything?
Groups, I mentioned this a lot. They come in, they know Jeremy's staff by name. So they just don't know that's the open space team. They know them by name. So and multiple CARES teams have said the same thing. So I can provide,
I think maybe I should tie my two comments together, right? That I think it would be good for the board to have persistent metrics over years to understand how CA is performing, and that the board would be remiss if it wasn't paying attention to CA staff as part of that health for the organization. Not that you don't see it, but sometimes just for the board to make sure that's front and center for them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, so along the lines of metrics, one of the metrics I look to is just how many how many memberships do we have? How many memberships do we sell? So along those lines, the question I have is that early in the slide, Sean mentioned that we have 55,000 members that belong to the gyms, pools, etc. So the question I have is, what percentage of those 55,000 members are residents living in CA, living on CASS property?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but we can provide it.
Yeah, because that certainly changes.
Dan might know it. Do you know
what
off the top of your head?
percentage
So
of
I
CA
can't
residents
tell you
are members?
the specific number of members because we really don't generally track members. We track memberships.
Okay.
But 62% of our memberships are resident memberships.
So that gives us about 10,000 memberships, and we have 33,000 households or so.
Correct, and there's another 5,000 Columbia cards.
Yeah, so the percentage of residents that can use the pools, gyms, something via membership is about one of every three households roughly living on CASS property.
If you include the Columbia
fair?
cards, it's about 40%.
Okay, well, that's close.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Sean. We are now going to go to the president evaluation policy. Colin.
I would like to move to approve the President CEO performance evaluation and procedure with edits as presented in the March 27th packet. I wrote it all out.
I second it.
Okay.
Can we do any objection?
There you go.
I can do it. So that's Colin, Mike. Is there any objection to this motion? Hearing no objections, the motion passes. We have a policy.
And procedure.
Yeah.
Watch it.
Okay. Last item under old business, the village management contract. Did we have a motion associated with this?
Yes. So I move that 1, CA staff shall continue good faith negotiations with the spokespersons of the village managers. 2, extend each of the village's contracts to September 30th, 2025. And 3, fully fund the villages for FY26 quarter 1 and quarter 2, subject to the approved CA budget amount, and required that the funding to each of the 10 villages be no later than May 1st, 2025 for quarter 1 and July 1st, 2025 for quarter 2.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. So
We couldn't hear you when you first started, Eric. That's the problem.
Yeah. Sorry. So I'm like reading off reading and dictating at the same time. So my motion is as follows. I move that CA staff shall continue good faith negotiations with the spokespersons of the village managers. 2, extend each of the village's contracts to September 30th, 2025. And 3, fully fund the villages for FY26 quarter 1 and quarter 2, subject to the approved CA budget amount, and require that the funding to each of the 10 villages be no later than May 1st, 2025 for quarter 1 and July 1st, 2025 for quarter 2.
I'll second it.
All right.
I'm sorry. Do you want to do it?
So
I just got the first
idea
two
behind
pieces of
this is
that, so
extend the
we'll
contract
have to work on it the rest of the way.
and the
He's
villages-
remote. He could type it to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I can email this after.
All right. So, discussion.
So, if I can just give a quick overview, the general idea behind this is that we extend the contracts to September 30th, give the villages and CA enough time to just negotiate, get everything hammered out, and ensure that the villages can still get their annual charge share so they can continue functioning. So that's the goal here.
Okay. Mike? Yep, all right.
Just the motion before you get too far. When you speak about each of the villages' contract, we have a contract with Dorsey that goes for another year. So I don't know how we could extend their contract because they've signed the agreements that were put forth. So saying each of the villages implies all 10, and I don't know how we can do that when we have a contract that's been signed with one. Now, whether you want to exempt them or whatever, that's a complication.
Okay. We're going to go with Karen, then Sky, and then Mike.
I have a quick question. You said it's just a one-year contract with Dorsey? What is the
Well, it's the it's the contract we propose, so I'd have to look at exactly, I think the term was we agreed to the 5-year term, didn't we?
5, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
that's, okay.
I mean,
I just wanted clarification.
on its face, I wouldn't pass the resolution as proposed.
Can I make a friendly amendment then? Since
Let me get through Sky and Mike, and then I'll come back to you, Karen.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. Instead of saying contractor discussions with all the villages, name the 8 villages that
friendly
it
amendment
would
to-
involve.
I'll second that.
Is it 8 or not?
8.
9?
8.
Has Owen Brown signed? I didn't think Owen Brown had signed.
Yeah, well, I'm just doing simple math. If Dorsey is signed, if we're talking about naming 8 more villages, there's one other village that doesn't get named.
All right, so it should be 9.
Oh, you got to say 9, Sky,
be
because
9.
Owen Brown, I don't think has signed
Can I
it.
ask Mike about that?
What's the question? Bill, can she ask me? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead. It's a simple question.
I thought I did. Where does Owen Brown stand? Is it one of the 8? No.
They have not signed the contract, but they did not agree to the letter that the other 8 villages sent because they weren't clear on what was being asked of CA.
Okay,
And they are separately asking something very specific from CA.
At this point, my amendment stands 8 and name them.
Okay, all right, so.
I still second Sky's amendment, but I have a question after that then.
Okay, Sky's amendment, Karen, amendment to name 8 villages
It's all the villages except Dorsey and Owen Brown at this point.
that are not Dorsey or Owen Brown. Okay, discussion on the amendment. Karen?
Yeah, okay, I have a question
accept
for
the
Michael.
amendment as friendly.
I have a question for Michael. He can speak after this. So Michael, do you really want to leave Owen Brown off of this? Do you want to give them the opportunity to negotiate, or they can just sign? They can still sign. They don't have to accept the extension, but I feel like you would want to give them that opportunity.
I think we're making a lot of very complicated, overly prescriptive motions right now that are probably unnecessary based on what Sean said in passing prior to the meeting. And I think we should let him explain what he thought the way forward was, because I thought in just hearing him briefly mention it, it sounded like it was going to scratch everyone's itches and that we wouldn't need to go down this path.
I think what we heard, though, during resident speak out and what Eric pointed out is that the deadline that CA, so what Sean, and I'll let Sean speak in a second, what Sean had proposed, whatever. So what Sean had proposed doesn't fit in the timeline because the deadline, we will not get an opportunity to vote again on this because the deadline that CA gave the villages happens before our next meeting. And that's why this vote now became more important.
Okay. Let Sean speak, and then I'll get to you, Ashley.
So,
Sorry.
To John's point, the amendment's complicated. We do have a signed agreement with Dorsey, so it's not just like we can waive that. That being said, an extension, and the villages can correct me if I'm wrong, that extension needs to go back to the village boards for their approval. So that would take time. What I'm suggesting, and I've reached out to Laura and Steve to meet as soon as possible. I don't think we're that far apart. So what I would suggest is give us 2 weeks, and the board meets again on the 24th. If they want to vote to have an extension or to urge us to pursue an extension, we can do that. I think we can certainly come to some agreement on the grant and share agreements. Funding wise, I think if, I can talk to John about this, but I think if we can come to an agreement in principle, I think then that we can work out the details and distribute the funding. So I think there's opportunity here for us to reach an agreement without having to pursue an extension. I'm not against an extension. I just think I'd rather focus for the next 2 weeks to try to get this accomplished than maybe if you have 6 months to do it, 3 months to do it, you say, well, we have a vacation or this is off and let's do that next week. And before you know it, we're 5 months down and we're sitting in the same spot. So let's see what we can do, and if, Steve and Laura are amenable, we'll see what we can do in the next 2 weeks. And then come back to the board on the 24th, and then we can make a decision then.
All right. Ashley, if you don't mind, I did commit to let Reg speak first, and then I'll come right back to you. My apologies.
Okay, so Sean, I'm going to ask this question. I have no idea which way you're going to go on this, but so if the deadline is the 22nd, and we get up to the 22nd, and the villages have not made their decision or not signed the documents, and we're going to meet on the 24th, what's going to happen? Will you be willing to hold off on the?
Yes, the deadline is more for with the way we distribute the funding. So we would be distributing the funding on the 28th. So we would want, their written documents, their contracts, we would want them in place before we distribute the funding. But we can certainly come to an agreement. And maybe the funding is, if we're in principle, then we can keep the same schedule. If not, we're a few days later. But the funding would be distributed as soon as we come to an agreement.
So what I'm hearing is, if we get up to the 22nd, and the villages have not taken up the decision to sign, that you'd be okay with this? We went over till the 24th.
We would pursue the extension.
We'd pursue the extension. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, Ashley, I'm going to give you free rein because we've just been going around here. But any other comments or any other discussion is going to go to naming 8 villages because that's the amendment on the table. So I've been letting it go and run for a while. That's on me. Say whatever you want, but after that, I want to know about naming 8 villages, okay?
I mean, you started to touch on it. Really what I was going to say is the April 22nd deadline is not something that is in the contract. It's something that was set by staff. So we definitely have the capability of pushing that deadline further out. And it sounds more optimistic in terms of the negotiation and the possibility for us to make a decision at the April 24th meeting. So it sounds like staff's in agreement. The April 22nd deadline that was set does not have to be enforced, will not be enforced, meaning we don't have to demand an extension as of right now. So.
All right, thank you. Eric, your hand is up. Tell me about the 8 villages. So what's your opinion on naming 8 villages?
I'll accept as a friendly amendment to facilitate this. I am still very concerned about the April 22nd deadline. I think something needs to be done because if we don't change that deadline still exists. That puts the villages in a precarious position that if time runs out, then they are at risk at losing funding. So if you look at the third part of the motion, it basically guarantees all 10 villages funding, their quarter 1 funding and their quarter 2 funding, regardless of how the negotiations play out. So I think ensuring that the villages are funded is important. And I think that at the very least, I want to make sure that we can do that, and so that when the villages are and CA are negotiating, that there's not a rush, that there's not a threat that the villages will lose funding coming May 1st. So I'm strongly in favor of making sure that we guarantee that the villages have funding and get their regular annual charge share per the budget. So I think that's key, and that should go for all 10 villages regardless.
Thanks, Eric. Colin.
Can you reread the motion?
I can attempt to. Let me see. Eric, that asked that the CA staff engage in good faith negotiations with the villages, extend the negotiation deadline to September 30th, 2025, and that's as far as I got.
You talked to
the third part was fully fund the villages for FY26 quarter 1 and quarter 2, subject to the approved CA budget amount, and require that the funding to each of the 10 villages be no later than May 1st, 2025 for quarter 1 and July 1st, 2025 for quarter 2. In other words, that for the first 2 quarters of FY26, all 10 villages will still continue to get their regular annual charge share as as determined through the budget process.
Eric, I think the second quarter starts August 1st?
Yes. Correct.
I'll take that as a,
I've even got people in the audience nodding on that one.
yeah,
Colin,
yeah, sorry, I'll take that as a friendly amendment to make it August 1st.
It's just a fact. We don't need to amend it. It's just a fact. Colin.
Eric, these are aggressive friendly amendments, so I'm acknowledging that up front. But I have two thoughts. The first one being nixing your second bullet point about extending to 9:30. And the reason for that is the kind of aspiration and hope that we can continue those conversations and we can revisit this at the next board meeting. And then the second one, again, aggressive friendly amendments, is to, instead of doing the fully fund quarter one and quarter two, just do quarter one, again, with the goal and hope that there's going to be ongoing conversations soon.
So the second one is certainly not a friendly amendment. I definitely think that we need to give enough assurances to all the villages that they're going to have funding for the first 2 quarters. So that, I think, is key. So I don't accept the second one as a friendly amendment. I am willing to separate the motion into parts if people feel more comfortable voting on the 3 parts separately. We could do that. And that way we could vote on, say, the 3rd part today, where we ensure that the villages are fully funded, and we could table maybe the first 2 parts for next week. But I still am, I do want reassurance that April 22nd deadline is not a real deadline, that if come April 23rd and there's still not an agreement that the villages stop getting funding, I'm really concerned about that deadline.
Okay.
So I want some kind of assurance that deadline,
all right.
that deadline is not a hard deadline.
Thanks, Eric. I'm going to jump in, then Sky, and then Mike. And I need to ask a question to Sean. I know this is an ongoing negotiation, but I want to make sure we're clear with this. If we were to disperse the funds at the end of this month to all the villages, are all the villages clear on exactly how much money they would get, and they all agree to that amount for the first quarter of this fiscal year?
Well, there's 2 issues here. So there's.
I know it's ongoing. I don't want to get into it.
I can just say broadly. Well, no, this is known. The allocation formula is a sticking point for one of the villages at least, and they're interested in the total amount from CA's perspective is the same. The way the funding is allocated to the villages. It can be changed. It's up to the villages, really. We're certainly willing to help in that effort, but the villages would need to agree on that new allocation formula. That's something we will certainly work on. I don't know if we can get that done in 2 weeks, but that is something that can be changed at any time. So that's not vital. The reason for the deadlines is because these are, in a sense, they're contracts. And like any contract, you have to have signed, agreed contracts. So this is just, it's a formality. We're certainly not looking to hold funding away from the villages. That's not how CA operates. It's not how it's operated since its inception. So, we're certainly, we want to disperse the funding. We also have an obligation to protect the organization and make sure that we're protected fiscally and legally. So this is just why we have to go through this process.
Point of order, we're out of time for this agenda item.
Great.
Move to 20 minutes.
20 minutes. So do we have a second for that? Yes. All right, so Eric wants to extend discussion for 20 minutes.
Can it be 10?
15?
We're negotiating.
I feel like we're close, so, yeah.
Hey, we negotiate pretty quickly.
Okay, so 15 minutes. All right, any discussion on extending? No? All right. Chris?
What are we,
Yes.
Just extending the.
oh, Jesus.
15-minute extension, yes.
Sky?
No.
Paul?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Yes.
I haven't gotten to you. Hang on.
Sorry.
Mike?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Colin?
Yes.
I'll say yes. So that's 8 in favor, 2 not in favor, 0 abstention. So we'll add 20 minutes to the queue.
No, I thought it
Or,
was
sorry, 15
15.
minutes to the queue. All right, so where were we? We were at Sky and then Mike.
I think this has been made unnecessarily complex. However, it's water behind the dam or whatever you say it. We're still discussing whether or not this pertains to 8 villages, right?
Eric
haven't
accepted
voted
that
on
as a
that
friendly
amendment.
amendment, so we're moving on from that. Mike?
I think the substance of this motion has already been achieved. That Sean has told us he is planning to continue negotiations with the villages. That the April 22nd deadline will not have a major impact on the timeliness of funding. And that if we need to extend the contracts, we can take that up at the next meeting. And I would suggest that we could be much more prepared to have a much more simple and clear motion prepared by staff for us to consider at that next meeting at that time, instead of whatever's going on right now.
All right, I'm going to go to Eric and then Paul.
So 2 questions. So one, the subject of the allocation formula has come up, and yet Dorsey Search has signed an agreement. Is there an allocation formula in that agreement? If so, how does that affect the other 9 villages? I mean, this is how can you have one village sign an agreement with an allocation formula, and then we want the same allocation formula that goes across the other 9 villages? Does that mean how does that work?
The Dorsey
formulas
Search
on it?
contract is under the same allocation formula that exists presently.
Okay, so in that case, I think the third part of my motion makes sense. Just that every village gets their, regardless of how these negotiations play out over the next 6 months, every village should be guaranteed to get their regular annual charge share per the current formula, as we put in place in the budget. So that I think should be something that we can do. We need to at least guarantee the villages that, regardless of how these negotiations play out, that they'll still be able to operate come May 1st.
All right. I'll go Paul and then Mike. Are you raising your hand? Paul and then Mike.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I mean, sorry.
You're right.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, so the issue here, I think the main thing is that the order that the villages think they had, that, the 22nd is this deadline and they won't receive funding. I mean, it might make sense to just make that as a motion, like to say that is not a thing, and then take this up at the next meeting, and then we can vote to demand an extension at the next meeting, if that makes more sense, just to say, like.
Right, I'm going to go Mike, I'm going to jump in, and then I'm going to go to Ashley.
I'll just say this is why the board shouldn't be making this many prescriptive decisions in board meetings, because we don't need to. I agree that shouldn't be a deadline for the villages given what's going on right now, but the board doesn't need to take action because we never set that deadline. That gives the staff flexibility to adjust to situations as they arise. And the more prescriptive the board is, just in general, in this situation and others, the more prescriptive the board is, the less responsive we allow the staff to be. And that's just inhibiting their ability to be responsive to the community. So we should aim to be less prescriptive, especially when they're telling us that the substance of what we want is accomplished. Yeah. What I was going to say before, though, is that it seems really like a really bad idea to me to guarantee funding to villages who may not even have a contract in place at that point. That we shouldn't be giving, like, that's at least at a minimum has got to be contingent on the villages signing some sort of extension, not just CA saying they're extended.
Right. Okay, yeah, I'm going to, me, then Ashley, and then Eric had his hand up, and then come to you, Karen, okay? It's getting complicated. Okay, now, I just want to say what Eric said was very dangerous, I think, because Eric has now stepped over the line and he's inserted himself into this negotiation and wants to actually dictate what the allocation to each of the villages is. This is an actual component. Eric, I'm talking, This is an actual component of the negotiation of the contract, and we are not supposed to be in the middle of this. We can talk about extensions of negotiations and things like that, but we cannot be prescriptive and assign values to villages as to how they are getting their money allocated. As Sean has stated, that is developed by the villages with the assistance of CA, and that is determined by them and not by the CA board. So I'm very
Bill,
concerned about
You're
that.
entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to change what I said. I was not prescriptive as what the villages get. It's just an extension to make sure that the villages continue to get their annual charge share so they can continue functioning under the current terms.
You were explicit about that. You said that you wanted the villages to get what they currently get moving forward. That would be prescribing their amounts.
For the first two quarters, that's the motion.
All right. Ashley.
We don't even need to really technically ask for an extension, like the villages are operating under an extension right now, which expires in September. So really all we're needing to do is affirm that the April 22nd deadline is removed, which Sean has confirmed. Otherwise, the villages would continue to receive funding under the current contract that they have, which expires in September. Does that sound correct?
It's not the way I view it. You can't unilaterally extend a contract, which is they're trying to do.
Well, it's the current extension that exists, right? The only
There's
thing
no
that
extension that exists right now. The only extension that exists is if there are ongoing contract negotiations. Right now, there are none. So there's no extension. That only exists if there are ongoing contract negotiations. Right now, there are none. So there is the agreement, the way I view it, expires on April 30th. Now, we can talk, and whether you extend it, that's one thing. The other thing I would say is, and I think the motion is unclear, and Mike brought it up, I would not advise you, pursuant to your fiduciary duties, to make it, let's extend the contract without getting written agreements, because at a minimum, we need to make sure that the villages abide by at least the obligations that are in the existing contract. To say we're going to extend it on one side, they have to agree to those terms. Now, they may do that, but you need to protect yourself and get them to agree to at least the terms that are in there now. I mean, we need to do that. I would not advise extending contracts without it being bilateral. We have to have those protections at a minimum.
So
is Sean having the conversations with Steve and Laura not considered negotiations? Eric, I wasn't done.
I'm sorry, there's two different conversations going on.
Ashley wasn't done and Eric jumped in, that's all.
Yeah.
Is it not considered negotiations for Sean's intention of having the conversation with Steve and Laura, who are representing the board?
It depends on how you I think the extension was, or the idea was to communicate and see where we were. I would not call that negotiate. Now, it may lead to negotiations, and the operative date is after April 30th. So you could call it negotiations up between now and April 30th, but if we say on April 30th, negotiations are over, then it's done. So, I mean, if you want to call it that, fine, but it has to be at the end of this term when they're continuing. So, yeah, if you want to call it negotiation, that's fine. But, you know, if he reaches an agreement on Monday, then we're done and everybody gets their money and we're happy. But we have taken the position, and I think it's in the letter that was referenced before. We've gone back and forth several times, and I won't get into the characterization. My understanding, I disagree with the characterization that was said earlier. But we take the position that, look, we've gone back and forth. You've given it us. We've given you. Here's the final version. Negotiations are done. Like, here's what we've come up with. So we've taken the position negotiations are over. Now, whether we reopen them, we could do that. But right now, we are not we have not agreed to extend the period to extend the contract through September 30th. Can be done. There's still time. But we take the position now we haven't done that.
So CA has dictated what the end of the negotiation period is, but it's not technically in a contract, right? It's an arbitrary date that CA gets to decide.
I think the date was put forth to make sure that the financial people had enough time to put the money in and it was timely delivered. I'm not going to speak for that. I would think we could make provisions to make, if we extended a couple of days past the meeting, you could still get the money. What we were trying to do is, I think, be ultra cautious to make sure that we had something in place and the money was there. So, but is the 22nd, could it be extended to the 24th or 25th?
Yes.
I think so.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Eric and then Karen.
So again, it sounds like, and from hearing the testimony, that yes, we could come up with something tomorrow. We could come up with something Monday. It doesn't sound like that's very likely. I wouldn't bet the farm on it. It sounds like this is something that's going to take more time, and based on that, I think the idea behind this motion is to make sure that if we're still negotiating, if we haven't signed anything yet, that the villages still get the annual charge share as budgeted on per the current allocation formula, and that should apply to all 10 villages. So the key thing is that the villages have to come up with their budgets for next year. They're going to plan for next year. They should have a certain amount of certainty as to what their revenue is going to be, and I think it's key that it's all, at the end of the day, this is all our annual charge dollars, and some of it goes to the villages, and the villages should have a guarantee that they're going to continue to be able to operate with the annual charge share.
Okay, Karen, and then Reg.
So I really need some clarification here. We're not negotiating. That's what kind of, I had a different question after Michael's comment, but then after hearing the other things, are we still actively negotiating with the villages?
Yes.
Okay, so you consider us to be an active negotiation, and Laura considers us to be an active negotiation. Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
All right, Reg.
Well, I'm confused here because John says that we're not actively, negotiations over for right now. But from what I understand, we are in active negotiations, or at least that's what the pretense is, right?
What John was alluding to was we thought we were complete. We had sent them the letter
Right.
saying we think we're complete. Here's the final version. So, but the villages have made it clear they don't think we're done. So we're happy to sit down and I think we're close to reaching an agreement. So we can certainly hash that out.
So from what I'm hearing is that we are very close, hopefully very close to having some kind of reconciliation where we're done, we have an agreement. So if we're close to having an agreement, I don't see what the issue is about at least saying, hey, the motion on hand to vote for it and say, we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable that, this is the intent. We're negotiating in good stead to come up with a solution here. I know Michael has said repeatedly, we want to do this for the staff. We want to do this for the staff. We want to do the staff. If you represent the staff, they voted. If the staff voted for you, and I love the staff, but if the staff voted for you to be on this board, that's one thing. But we were elected. Hold on, sir.
I didn't say any of that, Reg.
Hold on, sir. We were elected to represent our villages, and so our villages have stood up. Almost, or at least 8 of them have stood up and said, "We want you to represent us and go in there and plead our case," and that's what we're trying to do. And we've had residents coming out the woodwork saying they support. This is what they support. So I'm asking you guys, if we're that close, let's just go ahead and vote on, and so we can cement it, and so the villages can say, yes, we have some breathing room here. Yes, we see that they're going to be doing this in good faith. Otherwise, what are we doing here?
Reg.
I get it.
We were elected by residents, absolutely 100%.
Got it.
And
yes.
the core purpose of this corporation, of this organization, is to serve and enhance the residents' lives.
That's right.
Okay?
Keep going.
The other thing you have to recall is that we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that this organization endures.
We have a responsibility also.
Reg, I got to finish. Here's the deal. What's our liability if this doesn't get signed and we give them the money and someone falls down the steps at Oakland Manor and sues this organization for $50 million? We go, well, we gave them the money. It was good faith effort, but we left ourselves wide open with the back door to get sued. What we need to do is make sure that everybody's responsible here, and ultimately this organization endures so that when we are old and tired and can't be elected anymore, future people can elect other people to this board. We have to make sure that this organization survives. That's the principle.
This organization will survive. This organization will survive, Bill. And I understand.
Point of order, we're out of time.
I'm not going to argue anymore with you. Just,
I think you should talk to your risk management people and ask them what our liability is here, because that's what this is all about.
you know, the residents are saying, hey, this is what they want. The villagers are saying, hey, this is what we want. And we're even saying, we're close. And we keep acting like we're so close to them. Why are we pushing it away? Now, Sean has already said the 22nd, it's not a hard and fast. So I got that, and I appreciate that. But the villages and the residents want to make sure that that's what we're going to stand by. We're not going to come on the 22nd and say, doors closed, guys, sorry, we didn't mean it.
That's not what I was talking about. I was talking about the liability that we're exposing ourselves to here.
I got the liability. I understand that.
Sky.
I call the question.
Okay.
Can we just vote on it next meeting? There could be major progress next meeting.
I'd also like to recommend that we all vote in the negative.
Okay.
You're not allowed to tell people.
You can't tell them to vote.
Sky, I have enough trouble getting everybody to chime in.
And B,
I move the table.
we can make your case.
Move to table cannot be discussed, so we're just going to go right to the motion to table here. All right.
You have a motion to table, nobody seconded that.
Oh, okay, well, let's see if I can get a
I'll
second. Okay, motion to table. Do you have a time certain to table to?
Until the next meeting.
Until next meeting. And so that was by Mike, and is that Ashley that second?
Yep.
Ashley. All right, we're just going to go right down the line here. Chris, the motion is to table until the next meeting.
Abstain.
Okay. Ashley?
Yes.
Sky?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Reg?
No.
Karen?
No.
Mike?
Yes.
Eric?
No.
Colin?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So that is 6 in favor. Right?
Yep.
3 against and 1 abstention. That's the math that was getting me. Motion carries. All right, so we will talk about that at the next meeting. Let's make sure we get that on the agenda.
There, my notes.
Okay. Village management contract. On to new business, open space signage update.
This is open space night tonight. This is great.
I lost that for show and tell a little bit ago. Sorry, I got it. We got a lot of show and tell tonight. Stay awake. Don't go to sleep. This brings me so much joy. Okay, branding and awareness and community engagement, these are all priorities for us. So I'm happy to have Jason Heath and Tim Prigg here from our team, who are going to go over some updates and improvements that we've been working on for actually several years now around how to enhance our look and feel throughout open space, as well as some of the exteriors of our facilities, as well as monument signs. So I'll let Jason and Tim take it away.
Thanks, Jeremy. Good evening, and thanks for having us here tonight.
We're going to need the clicker.
Yeah, I think they're working on it. So good evening, and thanks for having us here tonight. We're pleased to present our enhanced wayfinding and branding project to the open space that will be implemented this summer. Tonight's presentation will go over the AeroSync Gross Branding Initiative, the branding elements and design standards like color, symbology, and fonts, existing sign conditions, new signs which include finger posts, directional signs, welcome signs, kiosk, and monument signs. And lastly, we'll go over the sign locations for the pilot phase of this initiative. So in February of 2022, Columbia Association hired ASG to develop a comprehensive design guideline, which we are using to enhance CA's brand presence throughout Columbia. The three areas of focus were engagement and inclusivity, building awareness, and to develop the framework, creating a guideline for a welcoming environment while increasing brand awareness. Community input and engagement helped create the ASG implementation guidelines. ASG and staff held multiple in-person events, gathering information from the community. ASG also held three virtual open forums, one for staff and two for the community at large. All this was done while staff promoted an online survey that was offered in Spanish, Korean, and English. The ASG project was done in three phases. The first included creating the goals, identifying key stakeholders, engaging the community, and evaluating existing conditions. Phase 2 consisted of working with staff to create a comprehensive list of assets and amenities and identifying ones that needed recommendations for implementing the brand. Based on the analysis of the inventory and community input gathered in the first phase, a framework was developed for a strategy of implementation. Phase 3 was working with the key stakeholders to develop the brand concepts and specifications. This included the concepts for things like signs, benches, colors, fonts, and symbology. After all this work was completed, ASG drafted the Columbia Association Asset Brand Implementation Design Guidelines document. That's a lot there. So here we're showing some of the concepts that were created by ASG. The three circled in red are the ones we'll be talking about tonight and implementing in the first phase. These are the graphic standards that ASG developed. As you can see, they're in line with CA's corporate marketing and design standards, which we use to create the signs you see here tonight. The photos here show the current conditions at Lake Elkhorn, which are dense and not very engaging. This will be cleaned up with the use of a QR code that will take you to the CA's Open Space Rules and Regulations webpage. The signs will also have a QR code that will take you to the new Discover CA GIS map. This is the same map that was presented to the board at the last meeting. I will now hand it over to Tim, who will explain how we took the concepts and created constructible signs that we can implement throughout Columbia.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. ASG design guidelines described the finger posts as the workhorse of pathway navigation. They're located at decision points. They orient the users both to direction and distance to nearby hubs and assets. We developed a robust solution for the post that begins with a concrete foundation and a powder-coated steel base. The base will support and protect the 6x6 wood post. This post has chamfered edges and is finished with a protective transparent stain. The directional fingers and what we refer to as the branding band begin with a steel tube that slides over and is secured to the post. The branding band is located at a point near eye level, and it displays the Columbia Association logo and the Discover CA QR code. As Jason mentioned, that's the code that links your smartphone to the GIS web app and map. These finger posts are substantial, and they will stand the test of time. The information on the finger posts is arranged in 3 distinct levels. The use of the Columbia Association corporate colors reinforces the brand identity. The top fingers have an example here, identifies the trail or loop with an overall distance. The second line of text will call out 2 primary landmarks along the trail. These landmarks will remain consistent on all the posts throughout the trail, so that the user will be able to orient themselves to where they are and where they are on the path and the distance and direction to the landmark. The middle blue layer will provide directions and distances to the nearby Columbia assets like pools, athletic facilities, play areas, and neighborhood centers. In some cases, these will be along the path, but they may also be located up secondary pathways. Finally, the lower green fingers will communicate information about the features that are important to the users but not specifically Columbia Association assets. Items on this level would include things like Howard County trail linkages, schools, libraries, street connections. And finally, the green metal cap completes the look and protects the end grain of the wood from the weather and decay. I will point out that the information on these new finger posts will largely be the same as the information on existing posts throughout the open space. However, the use of colors and the organization of the information will make them more friendly and more user-friendly, and the information more digestible. This is a photo of our prototype, and you can see those 3 layers in the information.
We were going to try to bring that in. We thought we might hurt somebody with that one. It's like 7 feet tall.
We brought the baby in.
We went safe.
A second component of a wayfinding package are the welcome posts. They identify specific areas and parks within the open space with a welcoming message and necessary regulatory information. These will have the same sturdy construction as the finger post. The signage element is a powder-coated piece of steel bent to form a 5-inch by 5-inch angle that's secured to a corner of the 7-foot post. Both sides of the angle will display the Columbia Association logo near the top, and the primary graphic is a bold welcome statement visible as you approach the sign along the path. The side facing the pathway will have a limited number of regulatory icons balancing what you can't do with what you can. And there will also be 2 QR codes linking information about where you are with the Discover CA and the Columbia Association rules and regulations. There will be locations where the tall welcome post would be out of scale, so we developed a shorter version, this fella here, to be used in those instances. The post will identify the open space trailheads and parks where pathways adjoin private property. When these posts are located outside of specific parks or areas, they would simply display an invitation to Discover CA. Again, this has the same construction, and it's about 4.5 feet tall. Another wayfinding and information delivery tool in the box is the electronic kiosks. The one at Lakefront has been successful and well received. Unlike the finger posts and welcome posts, these kiosks are dynamic. They offer the opportunity for CA to curate and deliver current information. We see an opportunity to expand the use of these devices in other areas, and Jason will explore some of that shortly. Finally, the monument signs identifying some of our major open space assets need replacement. With further study, we plan to create a design for the new structures that will fittingly identify and announce these significant community resources. Now I'll pass it back to Jason to discuss the pilot
program.
Thank you, Tim. So this is a map of Lake Elkhorn. Lake Elkhorn will be the location of the initial implementation of the open space branding enhancements. This map shows the approximate locations of the new directional finger posts shown with yellow dots, the new monument sign locations shown with the yellow rectangles, and the future location of 2 electronic kiosks shown with blue dots with the yellow rings around them. The 2 electronic kiosks are not part of this initial project and will be installed at a later time. We included the kiosk location so everyone could see the full vision for this area. This map shows all the things we just talked about, as well as the locations of the tall welcome signs shown with the red squares and the short welcome signs shown with the green squares. So we plan to have all the signs shown on this map fabricated and installed by the end of this fall. Once this is complete and with lessons learned, we will focus on other high traffic areas like the other parks in Jackson Pond. Once the high traffic areas and the parks are complete, we will implement the signs throughout open space, neighborhood by neighborhood over time. And that's it for our presentation. Just wanted to thank everyone for having us tonight. We know that was a lot of information, and if we have time, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think we've got a few. We'll start with Karen.
So Jason, it's always wonderful to see you at the CA board meetings. I'm really excited about this. I like the signage. I especially like the electronic kiosks because you know how I feel about making sure residents know stuff. So I like the layout here. What I wonder is, once we get through the pilot, I'm thinking about, like, we have, residential streets where you have a path. Are we planning to put any of these signs right there on the path, so on your street, you walk up to your path? And I think there might be a sign at my path, and I was just thinking today, I know there's one just before I go up the hill to Patriot Pond. There's a finger sign, but I don't know if there might be one right on Thunder Hill Road as well. But is there a plan to do that? I like that idea.
Yes, that's correct. Most likely, at the end of cul-de-sacs, it would be the 4-foot or 4.5-foot welcome sign. If the location, if it's needed, we would do a 7-foot welcome sign.
All right.
In what we're proposing, it just works out that we don't own the property up to the roadways in this case.
Oh, so you can't put them next to the path, right where they abut a road? Okay.
Just here.
Okay, no, that makes sense. That makes sense.
All right. Ashley.
Great. These look awesome, super modern and cleaned up. I think they'll be way easier to read, so I'm excited to see them in place. I had 2 questions. So one for the finger post where it has the colors, which is awesome to have as a designation. I'm just confirming we'll keep it in the same order, right, for people who are colorblind and obviously can't differentiate. Great. And then the second part, I like that the rules and regulations will be available on a QR code. They're also still going to be posted, right, for folks that don't have cell phones or are going for a walk without them.
So the 7-foot welcome signs will have the icons on them. We're trying to move away from having big, bulky signs out in open space that tell you what you're not allowed to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I can speak
They
to
will
that.
still be posted, but I think we're trying to reduce the amount of very word-dense signage in open space. So there will still be posted, but we're trying to tailor that a little bit to be more effective.
I mean, honestly, I'm trying to remember what the rules are, even when I'm walking by the sign, and I feel like it's really just the hours that stand out to me the most, right, of what is accessible. So, okay, thanks.
Okay. Sean, did you want to say something?
No, Jeremy answered.
All right, Reg, and then I'm going to go to Chris and Eric.
Okay, thank you. Just want to tell you guys, I think it's a wonderful project. I can't wait till it's all done. And just saying that, how long is it going to be before all these are in place? I know it's a huge project, but, estimate about how long it's going to take?
I would say a minimum of 4 to 5 years.
4 to 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. But I tell you what, it's an outstanding idea. I really love it.
All right, Eric?
Thanks. This looks really good. Thanks for all your hard work. No further comments.
All right, Chris?
Nope, I agree. Looks
All right.
fantastic. Love it. Can't wait to see him popping up in my neighborhood.
I'm ready to go, Mike, and then Paul, and then I'm going to jump in.
So I guess I have two questions. One is a very simple one. Are these replacing the signs that are currently there, like the no dumping signs and things like that? Those all come down and these will take their place with the QR code? Okay.
Yep.
That's good. And then I guess that kind of takes care of my second question, actually.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, the signs look excellent. I was just curious, how will CA prioritize the rollout of these in different villages and areas? Like, are there any areas you're looking at first, and how will that look?
No, that's a great question. So we'll prioritize the high-traffic areas like our lake loops, Jackson Pond. And then from there, we're working with Howard County as well, Chris Utah, and they're rolling out their new bike routes. So we're going to work with them to implement our signs with theirs, so there's not duplication of services. And then from there, we'll implement them neighborhood by neighborhood.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
All right. I got a couple of quick things. Number one, fantastic. Really great. But I've got a few other ideas. And I'll be quick. Number one, with your finger signs, is there any thought to embedding pedestrian bicycle counters into these signs so we can get kind of more data collected along the way as to who's using what sections of the pathways around Lake Elkhorn and then the greater system, so we could collect data and network as to usage and time of day and those kind of things? Is any of that been?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
Yes, we're planning to do that across
Okay.
all our assets
All
and
right.
locations.
Yay! Secondly, I've been to New York a couple of times, or enough times, that they have their link system up there. If you've seen these, it's very similar to the information signs that we have here, but far deeper in usage. They not only provide information and such, but they also are phone chargers, are emergency 911 call stations, and Wi-Fi hotspots. And this may all be some greater operability and functionality that if we're years down the line, we may want to consider. Clearly more digging, more utilities that have to come in. It's not just the electricity. But some of that might be really critical for people who are down by the pavilion or at the boat dock there. There's an element of life safety associated with that and some other things that might be worth considering. So just take that under advisement. It's kind of a dream a little bigger kind of thing, and it would really be a great service. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, okay, Mike, and then
I'm just saying, I'm really confused where that sign can actually exist, because that doesn't seem accurate at all.
So that sign is a sign that would be near the dockside. And so it would point, I'm assuming that this way would be heading to the pavilion, and this way would be heading to the East Inlet Boardwalk, which is the bridge at the other end.
it looks like the bridge at the bottom of the spillway.
So you're standing at the playground, and I'm standing on the dock. So it makes
It's
sense on
reversed.
my side.
Oh, it makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, it's reversed.
Is that better?
Yes, that does make sense. Yeah.
Sorry.
Mike, you need directions?
It's actually a little bit like this.
All right, Jeremy.
If I could real quick, can you go back to the kit of parts slide? So I just want to note, so this is what was generated by the consultant. So these are just renderings of what they might look like. But to get from these renderings, these drawings from a consultant to this actual sign took a tremendous amount of work. And I just want to note the effort by the team to develop these, because going from a drawing to something that's real, that's functional, that meets all the safety standards, right? Like, this is reflective because it has to be by regulation. The heights are exactly the way they need to be in terms of 7-foot clearance based off of center line off the pathway are exactly specified, by code. So I just want to highlight the amount of time and effort that went into by the team to generate these concepts that we're about to roll out. It was a significant effort to get to this step. So,
yeah, understood. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I think, Jeremy, the other thing to just say is that there was great discussions and almost arguments sometimes about how to make them rugged and long-lasting, because there are too many of these things that are sort of leaning like this, and the fingers are crooked and falling off. So, you know, this is a robust piece of.
Yeah, it's a significant investment in our infrastructure that can be reused in the future. You know, if things change, they can be powder coated and repainted and repurposed. So that the intent is to this to be a long-term enhancement for the community.
All right. Anti-mold coating, maybe?
Anti-graffiti, actually.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Next up will be the CA's Non-Native Invasive Species Management Program. That rolls off.
I think I need like a few more minutes than allocated.
Okay.
I think just give them some leeway.
I think that's the whole night here.
Yes.
Examples of some of these non-native invasive plants.
5 more minutes.
I thought you were going to bring in, is that bamboo?
Yeah, we can possibly do these around.
Passing around poison ivy.
It's a native. It's a native.
Did you not take me word yet?
I would know it if I saw it, yeah.
Oh, we have to get you signed up. Come
I
a
know.
weed warrior.
All right. Other members of our community operations team, so Danielle's back, she leads the sustainability division, and Eric Walker is our natural resources specialist who has decades of experience in natural resource management around plants and ecology, and specifically focused on invasives and native plant propagation. So I'll let them take it away.
All right. So, as you probably know by now, CA has been nationally recognized for our environmental sustainability programming. And this is due largely This is due largely due to the leadership and support from CA's board, from the president, and from the community. So we are very lucky to have our remarkable open space areas and natural areas in Columbia. And to preserve those areas, we need to perform some invasive plant management, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to first go over the invasive plant situation in Columbia, and then we're going to talk about our program for open space conservation, including our efforts to do early detection, rapid response, some priority species that we deal with regularly, CA's reforestation efforts, and our habitat restoration program. And then we'll wrap it up by explaining how this benefits the community and the various ways the sustainability team engage with the community. First, wanted to introduce you to our sustainability team. So this is Eric Walker with me today. He is our natural resource specialist, and as Jeremy mentioned, the invasive plant guru on the team. We also have a natural resource technician, Thomas Urban, and we currently have a Chesapeake Conservation and Climate Corps member. That's AJ Lochner. And Natalie is our environmental program manager. So the entire team, we work closely with the open space village teams, landscape services. We work with all the villages. We work with several different agencies within Howard County. And then we work with volunteers and the community regularly. So it takes a group to manage invasives and tackle this problem, but it's a problem we're happy to tackle every day. Over to you.
Thanks, Danielle, and thanks, CA Board of Directors, for having me and having us tonight. I wanted to start off by just looking at these photos of native plants in Columbia, because this highlights some of our incredible living resources we have here. This is a major component to the identity of our town, and it's really important for the long-term health of our open space. Here you have a mature pignut hickory grove upstream from Elkhorn. Those are pretty rare to see around here in that size. Blue mist flower on Lake Kittamuckandee, Virginia bluebells, and sassafras in the bottom right corner. On the flip side of that, we have invasive plants. So these are non-native invasive plants. And these are fairly common scenes around open space. In the upper left, you'll see trees covered with English ivy. We have pathways that are lined with non-native invasive woody shrubs. Vines consume trees and pull them down. We have forest floors that are completely covered with lesser celandine, which is right here. So these effects are very obvious when you're out and about. We have many invasive plants in our region, well over 150 non-native plant species here in Columbia, but we deal with approximately 30 of the worst. These infestations are well established and widespread, and we'll get into the conditions of why those are widespread and established, but they're numerous and they're everywhere. So this is probably the most important slide. These are the serious impacts that invasive plants cause. So the biggest one is this, how they alter these functional relationships in an ecosystem. So back to grade school science, the web of life, the food chain, is altered from these invasive plants. So they mainly do that by outcompeting native plants for water, resources, sunlight. They displace native plant populations, and this alters the plant community structure, which changes everything in the food web. So they can also alter soil chemistry and water quality. All this leads to a loss of biodiversity, which is a measure of species richness, and it also what sustains life on Earth here. They're very costly to manage, and eventually they will damage property and assets. And they're also incredibly difficult to control once they're established. It's important to note that we are not alone in this sort of forest health crisis. Throughout the entire mid-Atlantic, communities are facing this problem. But there's a couple factors that make invasive plants so prevalent in Columbia. The biggest, well, one of the largest factors is forest fragmentation, and it's the idea that you take, the graphic in the upper right shows a single contiguous patch of forest, has a certain amount of edge habitat, and it's a transitional zone. When you fragment that up and chop it up into little pieces, the amount of that edge also increases. It just so happens that white-tailed deer and invasive plants thrive on that edge. They're both highly adapted to thrive there. We have a lot of fragmentation here in Columbia. A lot of our open spaces bordered by roadways, housing lots, pathways, and then also we have a lot of human activity. That's the third factor in why invasive plants are so bad. Lots of disturbance over the years. So in a sea of like all kinds of invasive plants, how do we prioritize management? So this is a curve that shows not only the stages of invasion, but also the stages of management, and they happen to line up really well. So down on the bottom of the curve, you'll see kudzu. Okay, kudzu is not here in Columbia yet. We've not recorded any infestations, but it's up at Triadelphia, it's down at Rocky Gorge. It's close. Every dollar we spend on preventing that, we'll save $100 in the future of management costs, because believe it or not, new invasive species are still coming. So if you can stop it from coming, that's the best investment. And we made a kudzu wanted poster, and anybody that sees that and reports that to us, if we can quickly go out and control that, it will save us money in the future. And this is a model that's used by land managers throughout the country now. The second stage is eradication. So purple loosestrife, wetland invader, has decimated wetlands in the Northeast and in the Midwest. It's at Jackson Pond, Wild Lake, Elkhorn. That's one that we can eradicate. We can get it out of here. And again, that saves us money in the future. Bamboo, you can only hope to contain at this point. And as you follow further up that curve, you'll notice as we get to the top, we're looking at all our very common invasive plants. So burning bush, lesser celandine, multiflora rose, these things we see all over the place. Basically, if we're managing those intensively, we're kind of spinning our wheels, and we're not getting that much back from that. I just wanted to highlight a couple species that we're working on that are very difficult to control and becoming a widely talked about issue here in Columbia. Bamboo. There's about 200 infestations in Columbia that we've documented, and we have an inventory of those. We have over 90 that touch open space in some way. And then there's well over 100 that are solely on private property. So we're talking about 200 patches. Control is really challenging, and that's largely due to the structure of the roots. They form these really thick rhizome mats, and this stuff's like concrete. And so control typically takes
Forgot the flip, Jeremy.
typically takes a minimum of 5 years. The control methods are all largely based on the site conditions. So there's a couple methods we use, but a lot of them are dependent on where the plants are and property boundaries and all water and all that stuff. So bamboo is still sold and planted, and it's used as a privacy screen a lot here. That's a really common scenario where one neighbor wants it and the other neighbor doesn't. It damages property, and that's because it spreads underground indefinitely. Like running bamboo will just keep going. And so we're working on bamboo. Another priority species is tree of heaven. This is the host of the spotted lanternfly, which if you didn't see it last year, I don't know how you didn't, but it's everywhere. It showed up to the East Coast like 6 or 7 years ago, and it's just blasted off in population. They emerge in early summer and climb up the stems of tree of heaven. In the top there, you'll see the immature spotted lanternfly. They turn into an adult when they feed on the tree of heaven, and then they climb up the mature, tree of heaven trees that you'll see on the middle right picture to lay their eggs. When they're doing this to lay their eggs, they excrete out this juice called honeydew. It's also called frass. And wherever that frass hits, if it's a hard surface, produces black city mold. So at the base of all these tree of heaven trees now, we're starting to see over the last 3 or 4 years as the spotted lanternfly is increasing, we're seeing these areas that just look like a fire went through underneath, and it's that black city mold dropping down from the tree of heaven. You'll see the Range Ream Hill tot lot there. That's an example of, where we're trying to protect our assets. We really don't have a choice because the honeydew was dripping down so badly there, it was damaging, this really neat tot lot we have. We removed those mature trees there. Tree planting and reforestation is really important because it's so closely tied to invasive plants. The biggest limiting factors to survival in tree plantings are deer browse and rub, and then invasive plants. We do want to protect our existing trees, and invasive plants are probably the biggest threat to those, because of that out competition of not only native plants but native trees in general. We right now are wrapping up an urban tree canopy study that's being done by the Chesapeake Conservation Climate Corps. That's AJ Lochner. They're doing that for CA, and this is just a baseline percentage, a snapshot in time of what percent of tree canopy cover we have in open space. So we're looking at that in open space, and this just sets the stage for what we're going to try to do, and that's if our tree planting's working, we'll see our canopy increase, and if it's not working, we need to do more. We'll be able to measure that with these 5-year studies. Flow chart on the right is just to show how much planning and design and preparation goes into these tree planting projects and habitat restoration. Before actual plants are put in the ground, a large majority of the work is done on the back end on the planning. Habitat restoration is this concept that we can take places that have little habitat and wildlife value and increase that. We practice research-based management. And then so ecological restoration we were talking about earlier is this, the basic concept is we can create conditions that favor natives but don't favor invasives. In theory, the process goes remove invasive plants, install natives, maintain and enrich biodiversity, but it's never that simple. When we talk about biodiversity, in the upper right, you'll see this graphic. And this is a good way to explain the difference between natives and invasives. A mature oak tree can support 436 different species of caterpillars that turn into moths and butterflies. So 436 different species. Something like bush honeysuckle, which is a non-native invasive, supports something like 8 documented insects on it. So the native plants and native organisms are adapted to these native plants. Priorities in habitat restoration and tree planting are underserved communities. We want to protect our investments by, you can't just let these sites go. These tree planting sites typically take 25 years to establish. So our existing sites and investments, and we have a lot of tree plantings we've already done. We're focused on Little Patuxent tributaries and then areas of high ecological value, which we've identified. This is a 2-minute snippet on our dashboard that I just wanted to show real quick because it shows a little bit of the power of GIS. As I'm bringing up these layers, you'll see that we have all kinds of information here. We have habitat restoration, reforestation, our EDRR layer, bamboo. There's all kinds of information, but one of the ways I use it, and this is an internal dashboard that we're just using on a day-to-day basis for work. I'm clicking on a status tracker right there for my bamboo sites, and it's showing me which ones are open, which ones we're currently working on. So 25 of 87 are currently open right now. When I go out for the day and I want to go up to Harper's Choice, I can see those green ones are open, and that, saves me money and time. As I click on these points, there's photo records in there, everything we've done there. A lot of other biological data is captured in these records. And an example of early detection and rapid response that worked is this chameleon plant patch that we found, that one of our staff members found in Long Reach. And we went out and immediately controlled it, and that site looks really good this year. It's almost.
Sorry, where's that again?
That is over by Phelps Luck.
Okay.
Yeah. So tracking the EDRR stuff's really important on here. And then one more feature I wanted to show you is one of our newest reforestation sites. This is just upstream from Lake Elkhorn. We did this with Howard County. 355 trees were installed, and we went out and tagged individual points for each one of these trees, which actually only took like a couple hours. But by tagging those individual trees, we can go back to there multiple times a year and see how it's doing. That individual oak tree right there, we can go check on it. It has a name and a location. So that will ensure, in a protection of our investment on these tree planting projects, because we want them to mature. This is a Dorsey Search project we just completed up by the pool. And then you'll see all these statistics in the upper right, all these numbers. These are updated in real time. So as I'm planting a tree and putting it in, our number goes up to 1,081 trees planted. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Danielle to wrap up.
Thanks, Eric. All right, so why do we do this? I think Eric explained the benefits of removing invasives and encouraging natives. And by doing this, we are improving the air quality, improving the water quality, encouraging more biodiversity. We are providing access to healthy land, water, quality of life. And that's not just for the human residents in Columbia, it's also helping the birds and the insect populations and the mammals. So that's the goal. We want to have a healthy land, healthy Columbia, and to do that, we have to tackle this invasive problem. I wanted to note resident services. So as Eric mentioned, Tree of Heaven and bamboo are our priority species. CA's Communications Department put out blog posts about Tree of Heaven and then one on bamboo. And each time we've been getting a lot of resident requests and people reaching out to us that they have this in their yard or that they've seen it. And when we get these requests, Eric and team, they'll go out, they'll do site visits, they'll help create plans for removal if it's on a resident's property, if that's something they need to look into, providing technical support. And then another piece of that is that outreach and education component. So actually the first link on here, we have an invasive plant resource and reference guide. And in here, if you go to that link, it's also on CA's website, we have fact sheets and technical bulletins for just about every invasive plant species you can come across in Columbia. We also have these in handout form. So when we talk to people in person, we'll bring them some handouts, and this has, beautiful.
Everything you need to know about autumn olive.
Literally everything you need to know. Background control. So this is great, and these are all, so we have these all on hand, and then it's also online. So it's a really great resource that we can provide to residents. We do multiple tabling events every year, and we try to share this knowledge and education with the community. I wanted to make a note about Weed Warrior training. So I guess we've talked a few times about Weed Warrior training. I'm very proud of it. It's something we offer twice annually. So we have a spring and a fall session. This round, the one coming up in about 2 weeks, is not just in collaboration with the community college, but we're also partnering with the county's Department of Parks and Rec this round. And to date, we have 158 certified weed warriors. And those can all lead pull and plant events. So we have many more participants than that, but we've actually educated and fully certified 158 people, which is just great. We also have an Adopt-A-Spot program that is growing. The community seems to really like this program. And the Adopt-A-Spots are now on CA's GIS dashboard with a form. So if you're interested, you can fill that form out. You can also see all of the existing Adopt-A-Spots. So just really great opportunities for the community to help us remove invasives. So some key points, the objectives for our program, we're really trying to increase biodiversity in Columbia. We want to conserve and enhance our native plant resources and protect open space amenities for the future. I want to note the amount of hard work that goes into doing this. This is essentially an uphill battle. There's always new invasives for us to learn and try to tackle and manage. Plants are very good at adapting, so we have to be even better than them. It takes organization, hard work, and we have to use the best management practices and the best tools that we have at our disposal. We've been using GIS more and more, as Eric showed you, to make data-driven decisions and prioritize our management efforts. And working with the residents is a force multiplier. They are our eyes and ears throughout Columbia. It has allowed us to target more patches, to be more proactive, to see where things are and get a better handle on it. So we really value not just what the residents do, but also them letting us know and working with us on this program. And thank you very much for letting us talk about our program. We could talk about it for hours probably, but.
Sorry, wow, okay. You know, it's 10:20, you guys are still going. That's awesome. Ashley, Paul, Colin, and then Karen.
Awesome. Thank you for this. I enjoyed it. I finished the Weed Warriors program. Eric, I love running into you and you sharing all the valuable information. I also enjoyed Sky being in that picture in the presentation. Did you see that you were in that?
No. Wait, which one? Oh, yeah, stream leader.
Yeah. For clarification, so resident services, because I want to make sure that it goes out in our village newsletter. So it's the loosestrife, knotweed, hemlock, and kudzu, and you contact Eric. Is that correct?
Yep. Those
Okay.
are the 4 species, early detection species.
And CA will come out and remove it for them?
Not on their property.
Not on their property.
But,
Okay,
yeah.
if they see it on CA property.
If they have it on their property, I'll go out and literally show them step by step how to remove it. I've done a lot of those with Tree of Heaven where people have been like, oh, it's over here in my yard. How do I kill it? And I give them a fact sheet and, walk them through it. So
Perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just say, like, just to point out, between the natural resources plan and this program, like, it really shows CA's dedication to environmental health, and it's something I think we are all proud of. I'm very involved with all of these programs, but I know, like, there are lots of people, there are people watching tonight, and for this specifically, and I know I would be sort of remiss to not mention like deer management as playing into this, and like its impact on, you know, just native species growth and forest succession. And I was just curious about like how progress on that is going, and if, yeah, there's any, like how that's going, since I know that, yeah, people will be watching and asking.
Yeah, I can do a quick update. So we're continuing to collaborate with Howard County on their deer management program. We were able to piggyback on their infrared survey that they recently completed for the deer population in Howard County by adding in some open space parcels that meet some of the standards around management practices. And now that once we get some of that data, we'll continue to look for ways to help augment what the county does around the periphery of CA open space, and also look for ways to perhaps encourage deer to move from CA property into Howard County property where they can be managed. So it's ongoing.
Right, thank you. I think like all of this together will really benefit open space and just the local environment as a whole. So thank you.
All right. Colin, Karen, and then we'll go with Eric and Chris.
Thank you for this. This was really cool and really interesting. Kind of in a weird way, bridging the two presentations. One of the things that I'm thinking about, particularly when I'm around Elkhorn, there are trees that have signage in front of them, or I think that there are, or okay, great. Is that a part of your education plan too? Increasing that, revamping that, rethinking that? Because every time I see some of those signs, I think that they look a little sad at this point.
Yeah, so we've talked about that. It's on the list, the wish list, and I think if there's interest, then we definitely want to do more. Maybe in the fall when we calm down a little bit. But yes, I'm very interested in doing more of the tree signs.
Karen?
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate your presentation, especially the part about the bamboo. I knew that the roots were disgusting, but I didn't realize they grow to the side. I thought they grew down.
Oh, they spread.
They spread sideways. Okay. So I have a quick question about the invasive species. So I walk around Patriot Pond most days with my dog, and I noticed that recently it was completely clear cut all the way around that pond. It looked like small trees were taken out, and I'm just wondering, was that... And what was behind that? Because it seemed to me that that was a fairly healthy ecosystem, and I was wondering if there was just a lot of invasives in there, but it's been completely, like, there's a couple trees left, but all of the reeds and things like that were growing up around that pond are now gone. It's just completely flattened out.
Yeah, we'd have to talk with the village teams about that, but that wasn't part of a restoration project.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to get to Chris and Eric. I'll come to you. Chris, do you have anything?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and my apologies if I missed it. If somebody does have something, how do they contact CA about it?
So in general, questions can go to the open space email, but if it's about natives or invasives, energy management, watershed management, we try to drive them to the sustainability@columbiaassociation.org email address. So that goes to the sustainability team.
Okay, is there any kind of a plan for in the future to incorporate that with the new Discover CA app or anything like that? Or could they utilize the, what is it, ClickFix, ClickFix, whatever it is?
That's the county.
That's my hope, because data makes everything better. So crowdsourcing the data and getting this GIS stuff really out and about will make it'll increase our chances of, keeping our forest patches healthy for a long time. So,
right. I think, like you said, the residents are a force multiplier. Making it easier for people to call out an area where invasives are, I think is going to be key to helping get this under control better. So any venue that you can utilize to make communication from residents, from people walking around, to CA to point stuff out and show you where things are is going to just significantly increase your effectiveness, I think. So thank you for doing that.
All right, thank you, Chris. Eric?
Thanks. Yeah, good presentation. I've got no further questions. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mike?
Could you talk about just the practical capacity to address this, right? Or in some sense, it seems like you might be trying to bail out the ocean with a thimble, or are you like actually able to have like meaningful success?
Yeah, so definitely can talk about that. When we do invasive plant control, we capture our work by walking a polygon around the edge of where we've done the control work. So where we've removed invasives, we record how many square feet we removed there. And then we can go back to that area and see what we planted, like how that's doing, what's come up naturally, or how much more work needs to be done. And so we can measure the change over time, see how, like that's how you determine if it's successful going out and sampling. Does that address it?
Can I take a stab at that? So for some things where we get a lot of requests, for example, bamboo, Eric showed, we're only tackling a portion of those. So we do have to prioritize our management efforts. Is it something that we can contain? Where is it on the EDRR curve? Things like that.
And those numbers we collect with GIS, they'll paint the picture, because I can tell you right now how many I think we have 6.5 acres of bamboo in open space. So as we manage this, that should go to 6.2, 5.1, it should go down over time. And then as far as the idea of it being like a drop in the bucket, with the current pollinator crisis, any bit of nectar we can get to these insects that's native is beneficial. So it comes in small increments, but it is also scalable. And like there's a saying with natives, if you build it, they will come. So yes, there's a lot of value. Yeah, it is scalable as well. The good thing about CA is that we have boundaries. Like the fragmentation is a problem, but for managing these islands that are, completely checked out with English ivy, if we have borders and boundaries to that, it becomes a little more manageable.
Okay, Sky, and then I have a question, and then I think we'll move on just in the interest of time here.
Yeah, Telhoco and C-Click Fix are actually county-run, and they are the same one. If you type in one, you get the other, and I don't know which one, but I've taken both Stream Waders and Weed Warriors, and I really like to talk them both up, especially if you have young boys who like to destroy things. They can get dirty and wet in the Stream Waders course and working in it later, and they can pull up things and almost chop things down in the Weed Warriors.
Chop down the right things, the things we don't want.
And we don't want to chop down one of those signposts we just put up. Just two quick comments. First, on a lot of these edge portions that you've been speaking of, something you didn't mention, I was just wondering if it's an issue, is the soil compaction from, just use and John Deere gators and all other things. Is that an issue when you're trying to deal with eradicating invasives or anything? Or?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you disturb a piece of land and make it dirt, new seeds and new vectors come in and set up shop. And those areas that are heavily disturbed, they're way more challenging than something off the path where people aren't walking through it or mowers aren't going over it. So yes, You're absolutely correct. Compact soils.
Yeah.
Really hard to do.
All right, and then the last question is, who's actually going to go in tomorrow morning and put on the pot of coffee for open space? Because I think all of you have been here.
Half the team is here.
Thank you for a great presentation, and thanks to the entire open space staff for all the things we've heard tonight. Jeremy,
Real
last
quick,
word,
Bill,
please.
because we actually have more open space watching live right now that are answering these questions. So Karen, it was a Phragmites removal. That's an invasive Phragmites at Patriot
I was
Pond.
wondering about,
Yeah, so that was Chris Clem is watching, and he knew the answer.
Thank you.
And I got it. I phoned a friend.
That's fantastic. Thanks again. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right. All right, we've only got 2 topics left, guys. Not too bad, and they're just for discussion at this point. Board committee assignment policy. Colin, I think you were the one that wanted to lead on this.
I did, thank you for putting it in the packet and pulling the relevant stuff. I think that the 2 agenda items are kind of linked to one another. One of the things, well, there's 2, hold on, I just wrote it in my notes. 3 things that I'm wondering about was the timing or the assignment of committees. So, for example, this board, we did our assignment during the first meeting.
As it's tradition.
As is tradition. So the way that I was reading this policy is that that's not, I didn't see anything that said that had to be during the first meeting. So I was just wondering about confirmation about that and whether that's open for discussion. Yeah, and then 2 other thoughts that, well, the other one was actually about the IAT, because it's not in the policy as presented, and I'm just wondering if that's something that should be added or if we're okay operating as we are. But I also just wanted to open it for conversation about thoughts for this. So, yeah.
All right, any thoughts or, okay, Karen and then Sky.
My only thought would be is, Jackie's not here tonight, but when do we have the first audit committee meeting? So you need to have a committee to do that, and I think she was trying to schedule that pretty quickly after the first meeting. And the other thing is, I think, I don't have off the top of my head the full schedule of meetings right now, but we had a lot less meetings this year. So, I mean, just making sure we're here to actually create to assign people to the committees, that's all. Yep.
Okay, all right. Sky and then Eric.
Yes.
Okay, Eric?
So a question I have is, are we looking to change how people are appointed to these committees? I'm trying to figure out why this is on the agenda right now. Is because I don't see the policy. It might be buried in the that governance document, but what is what are we trying to accomplish here? Is this going to be something to vote on next meeting? And what's the purpose?
Good.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I see it in tonight's packet that there was plenty of information provided about the committee assignment and the committee information. So I was just interested in what other folks' thoughts were. Again, I think the second agenda item kind of blends in because I think I have heard from staff that we might want to be mindful about continuity, particularly for something like audit committee. But I don't, again, as I'm reading this, I don't see that codified anywhere, and I don't know if that's something that the board would be interested in doing. And I have some other thoughts, but I want to let other folks contribute first. But I really was just interested if anyone had anything that they wanted to weigh in about these policies.
Okay. Sky and then Eric.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the continuity. Jackie has been adamant in requesting at least one person on the audit committee
Sky, I hate to interrupt. I apologize. I want to make sure we finish the board committee assignment policy before we move on to that second policy. If Eric still has a comment on that, but I will go to you first when we go to that, okay? Fair?
But I think...
Yeah, I do have a comment on this. I think we could... I think we can improve this process a lot. Right now, the process is the chair during the first meeting starts appointing people, and then if in the middle of the year the chair feels like reappointing people or changing the composition of a committee, the chair can do that. I think that's problematic. It's happened this current year. I think we need to have a process that leads to more stability on these committees. I think that's important. So I would like us to look into maybe revising how we appoint members to committees.
Okay, good point. Anybody else?
Yeah, you cut off Sky. Her question, what she was saying was germane, even though, because Colin already said it, the two things are kind of intermingled talking about board committee assignment, and she brought up continuity, I think she should have gotten a chance to say her piece.
And I'm absolutely 100%. Sky, please jump in. Talk about the continuity.
I brought it up
committees.
because Colin mentioned the word.
Yeah.
Jackie has said that it's really important to her and the audit committee that there is some continuity on her committee, it's especially at least one person with experience. Last night, Susan made the same comment about risk management, and coming from me, I think it's equally important that the IAT have some continuity.
Okay. Any other comments on continuity? All right. Oh, Colin.
Sorry, so I don't know where this, I'm not talking to you, Siri. I don't know where this, sorry, it happens. I don't know necessarily where this goes. I don't know if staff has any questions for us that might be helpful, or like what direction to go. I don't know. Where can we go?
Well, it's really, it's the pleasure of the board how they want to go about doing that. And at the organizational meeting, I think what you're alluding to, what I saw last year at the organizational meeting was, not the chair and vice chair, but the other members. Sometimes it's better to just take letters of interest for the board rather than, appointing on the spot. It depends on the makeup of the board. If the board's established and they've been around, then whoever the chair or vice chair are will probably know the other members, so they can make the decision at the meeting. If there's a lot of new members, then it might be better to take letters of interest to see to gauge that experience or desire.
Okay. All right, Eric and then Ashley.
Yeah, I think when we talk about continuity, there's year-to-year continuity, but I think it's also important to have during the year, there needs to be a lot of continuity on these committees. We can't have people just switch in, switch out. I mean, the biggest example is the BOC. We have members switching out every meeting. I think this might be a good time to look at, does that really make the most sense? Or should we have a BOC that has members that serve continuously throughout the entire year? That might make more sense. Similarly, on the other committees, when a member is appointed, they should be able to serve out the entire year. The chair shouldn't be able to replace members in the middle of the year on a whim. I think we should have policies that have continuity across the entire year. And I think this has certainly been a problem this year. We need to have more continuity across the year, and that's a given. I think we just need to have committees that just live for the entire year so that the people in the committee can work with each other throughout the year.
Okay. Ashley?
Yep. So reiterating what Sean said, I think a letter of interest makes a lot of sense for especially newer board members who aren't familiar with what those committees entail, the responsibilities, and also just utilizing the proper skill set. So getting a feel for the skills that the entire board has available and utilizing those best for the organization. And then secondly, I learned from this policy, apparently the chair and vice chair nominees are supposed to submit a written statement 3 days before the organizational meeting for anybody who's interested. So I'm not sure if it matters that we're not abiding by our policy. So that was it.
Solid catch.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, that will conclude our new business for the evening. Questions only. Any questions on the president's report? Yes, Sky.
I have another question.
Okay.
I noticed that the timer is very small way up at the top, and I know that it can be difficult for the speaker to see where they are during resident speak out, although the boundary goes from green to yellow to red, but we don't know exactly when. I had problems with my village because I couldn't see that, and they're using the same thing you are. So I'm wondering if we could go back to the old way of doing it, or?
I can respond to that. I've been working with staff to figure out the right timer because having the audio indicator has been helpful for everyone, and we've been playing around with different tools. So
thanks.
Yeah. All right. State and local legislation. We just finished legislation in Annapolis, I guess. So anything? All right. Proposed new topics.
It's very silent.
Yeah, well, I think we're all getting tired, that's for sure. Just want to make sure we get that tabled motion onto the
Oh, yes.
agenda for next time for sure. We'll just revisit that. Chair's remarks, it is late. I don't have any remarks. So we'll do it the way we started. Any objection to adjourning? Hearing no objection, we're adjourned. Thank you all for a very, very good evening.